How many of you were able to be outside for a few minutes? Wonderful. I even went and got some ice cream on Main Street. It was good. So the prayer today is going to be offered by the wonderful delegate from Frederick and Carroll counties.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Friends, bow your heads. Lord, we ask you this afternoon to give us clarity of thought, to let each of us understand that each one of us does matter, even if we're in the minority, even if some think our votes don't count. They count to us and they count to the people that we represent. So let's take our comments, our amendments, and the serious matter seriously and respectfully, and let us, if the Lord wills, get home before the sun goes down.
I don't know about that.
In the Lord's name, amen.
Amen. Delegate, I was going to say that may require like a call to the Pope, I think.
There's always the rapture.
Hey, you got me there. You go, girl. Okay, quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Okay. The clerk will, everyone in their seats, please. People from the back. Let's just give a second. The clerk will call the roll. There being 127 members present, the House is still in session. The clerk will read the journal from the previous day.
Annapolis, Maryland, March 27, 2026.
Recognizing the Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the journal.
So order petitions, memorials, and other papers. For planning purposes for the body, I know we usually don't do that, but I'm treating you like I like to be treated if I was sitting there, okay? We're going to have probably two, this session and another one. So it's going to be a long evening, okay? Just wanted to let you know so that you can plan ahead with your family members. We're going to start with House Bill amended in the Senate, House Bill number 14. The clerk will read the bill and the Senate amendments.
House Bill 14, County Boards of Education, Bullying, Harassment, or Intimidation, Information Collection and Reporting Requirements, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Committee Chair of Ways and Means.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
The Senate amendments removed all of the House changes to the bill. I move not to concur.
The question before the House is not to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are rejected. The clerk will read the message to the Senate.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, the House of Delegates refuses to concur in the Senate amendments and respectfully requests the Senate recede from its position. Should the Senate prefer a conference committee to confer the disagreeing votes of the two houses, the House appoints Delegate Eber-Soleil, Chair, Delegate Patterson, and Delegate Miller. Said bill is returned herewith.
House Bill amended in the Senate, House Bill number 573. The clerk will read the bill and the Senate amendments.
House Bill 573, Fair Housing and Housing Discrimination Regulations, Intent and Discriminatory Effect, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Committee Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move to not concur.
The question
Senate
before the
amendments.
House is to not concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are rejected. The clerk will read the message to the Senate.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, the House of Delegates refuse to concur in the Senate amendments and respectfully request the Senate recede from its position. Should the Senate prefer a conference committee to confer on the disagreeing votes of the two houses, the House appoints Delegate Ampry, Chair, Delegate Charkoudian, and Delegate Adams. Said bill is returned herewith.
The following messages is regarding House Bill 907. The clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 907, Criminal Law, Third Degree Assault.
The clerk will read the message from the Senate.
Ladies and gentlemen of the House of Delegates, the Senate does not recede in the Senate amendments and respectfully request the House reconsider and concur. Should the House prefer a conference committee to confer on the disagreeing votes of the two houses, the Senate appoints Senator Smith chair, Senator Love, and Senator With. Said bill is returned herewith.
The clerk will read the message to the Senate.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, the House of Delegates still does not concur in the Senate amendments to the House bill and agrees to a conference committee to confer on the disagreeing votes of the two houses. The Senate has appointed Senator Smith chair, Senator Love, and Senator West. The House appoints Delegate Cardin chair, Delegate Valentine, and Delegate Moon. Said bill is returned herewith.
House bill amended in the Senate. It is House Bill 1259. The clerk will read the bill and the Senate amendments.
House Bill 1259, zoning authorities, operation of family care, child care homes, prohibitions and requirements.
Recognizing the chair of the Economic Matters Committee.
Madam Speaker.
The vice chair.
We move not to concur with Senate amendments.
The question before the House is to not concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are rejected. The clerk will read the message to the Senate.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, the House of Delegates refuse to concur in the Senate amendments and respectfully request the Senate recede from its position. Should the Senate prefer a conference committee to confer on the disagreeing votes of the two houses, the House appoints Delegate Ampry chair, Delegate Charkoudian, and Delegate Weibel. Said bill is returned herewith.
Following message is regarding Senate Bill 233. The clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 233, Business Regulations, Cemeteries, Requirements for Sale or Transfer or Government Acquisition.
The clerk will read the message from the Senate.
Ladies and gentlemen of the House of Delegates, the Senate refused to concur in the House amendments and respectfully requests the House recede from its position. Said bill is returned herewith.
The clerk will read the message to the Senate.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, the House of Delegates does not recede in the House amendments and respectfully requests the Senate to reconsider and concur. Should the Senate prefer a conference committee to confer on the disagreeing votes of the two houses, the House appoints Delegate Rogers chair, Delegate Charkoudian, and Delegate Adams. Said bill is returned herewith.
The following message is regarding Senate Bill 626. The clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 626, Sex Designation on Certificates of Birth, Licenses, and Identification Cards, and Birth Information Histories, Birth Certificate Modernization Act, Amendment Number 1.
The clerk will read the message from the Senate.
Ladies and gentlemen of the House of Delegates, the Senate refused to concur in the House amendments and respectfully request the House recede from its position. Said bill is returned herewith.
The clerk will read the message to the Senate.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, the House of Delegates does not recede in the House amendments and respectfully requests the Senate to reconsider and concur. Should the Senate prefer a conference committee to confer on the disagreeing votes of the two houses, the House appoints Delegate Coulson chair, Delegate Martinez, and Delegate Hutchison. Said bill is returned herewith.
Next, we have, for those of you that are following, Concurrence Calendar Number 19. The clerk will read the first bill and the Senate amendments.
House Bill 501, Criminal Law, Sexual Offense by a Person in a Position of Authority, Amendment Number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the Judiciary Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
We move to concur with the Senate amendments.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 501 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 127 votes in the affirmative and 0 votes in the negative, House Bill 501, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. For those of you that are following, the next report is a report of the Committee on Rules and Executive Nominations. It is report number 9. The clerk will read the bill and the committee it is referred to.
Senate Bill 279, re-referred to Economic Matters. Senate Bill 411, re-referred to Health.
Thank you. The next one is Concurrence Calendar Number 20. The clerk will read the first bill and the Senate amendments. Go ahead.
House Bill 613, Department of the Environment, waivers for living shorelines and non-structural shoreline stabilization measures, regulations, and scoring system. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Chair of the Environment and Transportation Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The
You're
Senate
welcome.
worked with the House sponsor on amendments that alter their definition of living shoreline, allow a property owner to agree to an extension of the timeline for the Maryland Department of Environment to visit a site when evaluating a waiver request, and requiring a soil conservation district that wishes to make recommendations on a waiver request to do so within 15 days after receiving written notice from the department. We would move to concur with the Senate's amendments.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 613 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 127 votes in the affirmative and 0 votes in the negative, House Bill number 613, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Concurrence calendar number 21. The clerk will read the first bill and the Senate amendments.
House Bill 315, Human Relations, Discrimination in Housing, Income-Based Housing Subsidies, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Chair of the Committee on Economic Matters.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Motion
You're
to
welcome.
concur with the Senate amendments.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 315 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 96 votes in the affirmative and 34 votes in the negative, House Bill number 315, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 548, Land Use Permitting Development Rights Maryland Housing Certainty Act, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Move to concur with the Senate amendments.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 548 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 112 votes in the affirmative and 16 votes in the negative, House Bill number 548, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 571, Nonprofit Housing Corporations, Taxes and Special Assessments, Exemptions, Alterations.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move to
You're
concur
welcome.
with the Senate amendments.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 571 is on third reading and final passage. Recognizing the lady from Baltimore County.
Thanks, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Could the floor leader rise and tell us what we've concurred with, please?
Sure. The Senate amendment removes the property in Baltimore City that, 1, belongs to a nonprofit housing corporation and, or is owned by a subsidiary entity from tax exemptions.
So
State and
does
local
it
taxes.
still include nonprofit? It just removed the Baltimore City nonprofit?
Yes.
So it's still, yes, it still includes nonprofits.
Yes.
And what can you tell us about those?
About the nonprofit?
Yes, that what are you're giving them special tax breaks or?
Nonprofit housing developers.
I'm sorry?
Nonprofit housing developers?
Okay. So are this bill giving them special tax breaks?
They can negotiate.
It gives them the ability to
The
negotiate.
local, yes.
To have their property taxes reduced
With local governments, yes.
with local governments. Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
My pleasure. House Bill 571 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 95 votes in the affirmative and 34 votes in the negative, House Bill number 571, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 895, Consumer Protection, Price Setting of Consumer Goods and Services, and Use of Protected Class Data, Protection from Predatory Pricing Act, Amendment Number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move to concur with the Senate amendments.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Recognizing the gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
Would
welcome.
the floor leader or the committee chair just tell us what those Senate amendments were?
Sure. The amendment expands the list of exemptions and alters definitions, alters prohibitions, specifically limits the private right of action.
Who did it expand the list of exemptions to? Who is now included that was not included before?
Appreciate the question. It exempts. Exemptions of types of situations, but not people.
Could you just help me understand what type of situation now is included that wasn't included before?
Sure. Let's see. The use of, okay, so it also prohibits the use of personal class data that is exempt from the state and sale and use tax, and, I'm sorry, commercial pricing? Promotional pricing.
Okay. Thank you.
Loyalty programs. Good? Okay. You're welcome.
Madam Speaker.
Yes. Recognizing the gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Floor leader.
Yes, Madam Speaker.
It's good to see you. There was some conversation on the floor here before it went over to the Senate about allowing to allow this if prices actually went down. Is that part of the amendment or no?
Yes.
So now it can be used if prices go down?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
All right. House Bill number 895 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 100 votes in the affirmative and 31 votes in the negative, House Bill number 895, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Anne Arundel.
I just want to make sure I was recorded in the green on HB 613.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Recognizing the gentleman from Hartford County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Vote
You're
change
welcome.
on House Bill 548 from green to red.
Any other vote change? Remember to turn in your yellow slips, please. Next, we have concurrence calendar number 22. The clerk will read the first bill and the Senate amendments.
House Bill 1430, Maryland Public Charter School Program, School Facilities Funding, Amendment Number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair
Thank you,
of
Madam Speaker.
appropriations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move
You're
to
welcome.
concur.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 1430 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 124 votes in the affirmative and 7 votes in the negative, House Bill number 1430, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The concurrence calendar number 23 is the next one. The clerk will read the bill and the Senate amendment.
House Bill 1076, Higher Education Institutions Over-the-Counter Contraception, Access and Reporting, Amendment Number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move to concur in the Senate amendments which conform the bill to the Senate Bill 532, which already passed this chamber and is now on the governor's desk. Move to concur.
Thank you. The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Recognizing the lady from Hartford County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I looked into this a little bit more after the last. I don't have any questions. I'm just making up.
I did want to say it's already on the governor's desk. So
I heard, yes. Thank you so much.
On the governor's desk.
I appreciate you. I do also really love the governor's desk. Anyways, I wish my bill would get there.
Let's listen.
I looked into this a little bit, and there was a little bit of misinformation for those on our side of the aisle who might be concerned There is no way to actually verify somebody's age. In fact, even if we use vending machines and things, so this could potentially give access to, as was asked by the gentle lady from Frederick over there, whether or not people under the age of 18 would have access to something like Plan B or an abortion-related medication. The answer is yes, and they would be under the age of 18.
House Bill number 1076 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 98 votes in the affirmative and 32 votes in the negative, House Bill number 1076, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. All right, the next one is concurrence calendar number 24. The clerk will read the first bill and the Senate amendments.
House Bill 624, Hospital Staffing Committees and Plans Establishment Safe Staffing Act of 2026, amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the Health Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
We respectfully move to concur.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 624. It is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If
Madam
not,
Speaker.
recognizing the gentleman from Montgomery.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To explain my vote, this vote is in recognition of all the work of our healthcare professionals who time and again work extended hours, are asked to even cover second and third shifts, and the added responsibilities, but also all of the rigor that comes with working in the healthcare industry. And so we need to ensure that our hospitals are well taken care of, but in particular, the workers that make sure that healthcare is provided both in a manner that is adequate, but also meets the needs of the individual that is seeking that health care. And so this bill would ensure that there is staffing commitments, there will be a committee, and the input of workers will certainly be respected in ensuring that there is appropriate and adequate staffing so workers aren't dealing with burnout. And I'm proud to vote green. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. The clerk will take the call. There being 96 votes in the affirmative and 35 votes in the negative, House Bill number 624, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Before we go on to the next bill, the gentleman from Montgomery County, you have an assistant there. Can you please introduce him? I want the body to meet him.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, I do have an assistant today and a very special guest who is joining us on the House floor, my nephew David, who is here today.
Hi, David.
David is completing his social studies project on the state of Maryland, and this is the last part of his project that includes, of course, not just covering the Maryland General Assembly, but what we do here. And so asking everyone to be on their best behavior, certainly watch your language. And please, welcome my nephew. I'll allow him to say a little bit more.
Hello, my name is David, and I am 10 years old. And I go to school. The school I go to is Granite Baptist Academy in Anne Arundel County, and that's also where I live. And I'm proud of my Uncle Gabe for sending me here to learn more about the House of Delegate. And I wanted to upgrade my pictures for my notebook to give it to my teacher.
Well, we welcome you, David, and we welcome you. Okay, the next bill is concurrence calendar number 24. The clerk will read the first bill and the Senate amendments.
House Bill 811, Aging in Place Programs, grants multi-generational third places. The Village Multi-Generational Third Places Act, amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move to concur.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 811 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 101 votes in the affirmative and 30 votes in the negative, House Bill number 811, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will be so kind and read the next bill, please.
House Bill 939, Certificates of Birth Filing Time Period, amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the Health Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Respectfully move to concur.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 939 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 130 votes in the affirmative and 0 votes in the negative, House Bill number 939, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will be so kind and read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1151, Maryland Department of Health Study on Maryland Medical Assistance Program, reimbursement of hospice room and board services, amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
Respectfully
welcome.
move to concur.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 1151 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 122 votes in the affirmative and 8 votes in the negative, House Bill number 1151, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1367, Commission on Reimagining Healthcare in Maryland, amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the Health Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Respectfully move to concur.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 1367 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will call the roll. There being 96 votes in the affirmative and 35 votes in the negative, House Bill number 1367, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Recognizing the delegate from Hartford County.
You were so quick. My finger literally was not working on HB 939, and I'd like to record it in the green.
All right. Thank you. Make sure we get the yellow slip. Any other vote change? Recognizing the gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
House Bill 548 from green to red.
Anyone else for vote change? We're doing the concurrence calendar number 25. The clerk will read the first bill and the Senate amendments.
House Bill 828, State Board of Education Membership Educational Support Member, amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the Ways and Means Committee.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
The Senate amendments replace the required educational support professional on the State Board of Education with authorization for an employee of the County Board of Education. I move to concur with the Senate amendments.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 828 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 131 votes in the affirmative and 0 votes in the negative, House Bill number 828, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Thank you. Okay. We're doing concurrence calendar number 26. The clerk will read the first bill in the Senate amendments.
House Bill 260, Public Financing Act, Fair Campaign Financing Fund Distributions, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair of Government, Labor, and Elections.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can we move this to the end of the calendar, of this calendar? Sorry.
Yes.
Thank you.
260.
Yeah. We just move it. Thank you so much. Thank you. We're going to do concurrence calendar number 27. The clerk will read the first bill in the Senate amendments. And that's the Judiciary Committee. Next.
House Bill 130, Task Force to Study Deed Fraud, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We
You're
move to
welcome.
concur with the Senate amendments.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 130 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 130 votes in the affirmative and 1 vote in the negative, House Bill number 130, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 281, Family Law, Child Care Providers, Criminal Background Investigations, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the Judiciary Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
We move to concur with the Senate amendments.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 281 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 130 votes in the affirmative and 0 votes in the negative, House Bill number 281, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will be so kind and read the next one, please.
House Bill 963, Registers of Wills, Appointment of Personal Representatives, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the Judiciary Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
We move to concur with the Senate amendments.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 963 is on third reading and final passage. Recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you,
You're
Madam Speaker.
welcome.
If the committee chair wouldn't mind, does the bill, and I hope I'm not getting this wrong, I'm working off of my own floor system, which is not quite as good as a computer. It's just my memory. Is this the bill that allowed personal representatives to be appointed who may not be citizens of the United States?
That's correct.
Okay, and the Senate committee didn't change, or the Senate amendments didn't change any of that? That's still the posture of the bill as we vote on it for final passage?
That's correct.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
So House Bill 963 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will take the call.
Madam Speaker.
I'm sorry. Call the roll, I meant. Now the clerk will take the call. Thank you. There being 98 votes in the affirmative and 33 votes in the negative, House Bill 963, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1326, Child Abuse and Neglect Disclosure of Reports and Records, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the Judiciary Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
We move to concur with the Senate amendments.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 1326 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 130 votes in the affirmative and 0 votes in the negative, House Bill number 1326, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Concurrence calendar number 28. The clerk will read the first bill in the Senate amendments.
House Bill 525, County Boards of Education, Student Electronic Communication Device Use Policy, Establishment, Maryland Phone Free Schools Act, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the Committee on Ways and Means.
Thank you, Madam
You're
Speaker.
welcome.
The Senate amendments rename the bill after Senator Joanne C. Benson, clarify that the Maryland School for the Blind and the Maryland School for the Deaf are not covered by the bill, and adjust the exemption for students with disabilities to any reasonable accommodations related to a disability. We move to concur with the Senate amendments.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 525 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 129 votes in the affirmative and 2 votes in the negative, House Bill number 525, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Recognizing the gentleman from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Bill 525 to Green.
Any other vote change? The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. I'm sorry. I know. Here you go. This one is very tiny. Can't give you my big chocolate. I made a mistake. I know I throw you off. I apologize. You're doing me a favor, though. I don't need to be eating so much chocolate. So, report of the Committee on Appropriations. It is report number 35. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 1020, State Police Retirement System, Mandatory Retirement Age, Alteration, favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
Senate Bill 654, State Police Retirement System, Mandatory Retirement Age, Alteration, favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. The next report is a report of the Committee on Environment and Transportation. It is report number 26. The clerk will read the first bill, please.
Senate Bill 877, Baltimore City Stop Sign Monitoring Systems Pilot Program, 41st Legislative District, favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Yep. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
Senate Bill 940, Environment Water Quality Testing, Secondary Maximum Containment Levels Action Plan, favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Government, Labor, and Elections. It is report number 47. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 44, Election Law, Petitions and Ballot Questions, Contents, Plain Language Requirement and Procedures, favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is auto printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
Senate Bill 215, Veterans and Uniformed Services Maryland Veterans Trust Fund and Application of Laws, favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is auto printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
Senate Bill 627, Korean American Day, favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is auto printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
Senate Bill 694, Human Relations, Violations of County Discrimination Law, Complaints, favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is auto printed for third reading. The next report is the report of the Committee on Ways and Means. It is report number 43. The clerk will read the first bill, please.
Senate Bill 644, Sales and Use Tax Certificates Indicating Multiple Points of Use Alterations, favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is auto printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
Senate Bill 672, Prince George's County, Expanding Access to Early Childhood Education and Child Care, favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is auto printed for third reading. The next report is the report of the Committee on Appropriations. It is report number 36. The clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 597, Higher Education, Maryland Artificial Intelligence Partnership. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
The amendment clarifies language regarding policy guidance by the Department of Information Technology and work of the Artificial Intelligence Lab in relation to state agencies. Move the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered passed to third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
Senate Bill 1007, Prior Authorizations of State Debt Alterations. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Move so much be considered a reading of the amendment.
So order.
There's one amendment that makes changes to the prior authorizations to projects in the prior capital budget that were not passed in the Senate version of this bill. Move the amendment, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is auto passed to third reading. The next report is a report of the Committee on Government, Labor, and Elections. It is report number 46. The clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 65, Election Law, Campaign Finance, Exploratory Committees. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Thank you. The amendments
welcome.
increase the amount of transfers the governor, the lieutenant governor, comptroller, attorney general, Senate president, and Speaker of the House may make to a state central committee of a political party or a legislative party caucus committee from $6,000 to $24,000 in an election cycle. Please move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title?
Madam Speaker, if I may, I have one
Yes.
additional amendment at
Okay.
the desk.
Yes.
Amendment number 403520/1.
Amendment number 1.
Thank you. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Thank you. The amendments
welcome.
increase the amount of transfers the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, legislative party caucus committees, the speaker, and the president of the Senate and minority leaders of the House and Senate may make to the state central committee of a political party from $6,000 to $24,000 in an election cycle. Please move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. You have a
Madam
question?
Speaker.
Go ahead.
I did.
Recognizing the minority leader and then the gentleman from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If my colleague from Frederick County would engage question, I remember hearing exploratory committee bills for a couple of years before that subject matter went to a different committee. So how does it work under the bill if I form an exploratory committee? Let's say I'm a sitting member of the House of Delegates, and I think, I think maybe I want to run for Attorney General. And I form an exploratory committee rather than raising money through my own existing campaign finance entity as a member of the House of Delegates. I say I'm going to form an exploratory committee 2 years in advance to potentially run for Attorney General. And now does it work that I can raise money into both committees, but I'm still capped from an individual at the $6,000 cap? So I can't raise more than $6,000 into both of those committees. Is that still the way it works?
Yeah, so currently, when you have an exploratory committee, that's actually an unlimited amount of contributions that you can receive.
So how does it work, I guess? So I guess my question is, if I said I have the committee of me for delegate and now I form an exploratory committee of me for something else, can I take $6,000 from an individual into one committee and $6,000 into another committee, or am I capped at just 3 into each, if that's the math?
Thank you. Sorry, I missed something, so I just want to back up slightly with your specific example. The exploratory committees does not apply to people who are current incumbents looking to run for a new seat. It only applies to people who are exploring from outside that aren't incumbents looking to run.
So current incumbents can't have an exploratory committee. They can't have a dual entity, essentially.
Correct.
So that's a little different from when I heard the bill previously. But then let's take that example. I'm someone who I don't have an existing campaign finance entity. I decide I want to start an exploratory committee. And I raise $250,000 into the exploratory committee. And I decide I don't want to run for that office. Can I take that money and then convert it to another campaign finance entity? So let's say I wanted to raise $250,000. I'm going to run for Attorney General. People gave me a lot of money thinking I was going to do that. And then I say, whoopsie, it's a bad idea. Instead, I want to run for county council, and I'm just going to transfer the $250,000 over to that.
Yeah, you can only transfer up to $6,000 out of the exploratory committee to a campaign committee finance.
So what would I do under the example I just gave you with that other $244,000? Someone raised it, they gave it to me because I was exploring a run. I didn't spend any of it. I can transfer $6,000 into something else. What do I get to do with the other $244,000?
Yeah, so you have a couple options. One, you can return it to your donors. That's always an option. You can
very charitable.
Yes, of course. The second is you can give it to a charity, ironically, or you can also give it to the state party as well.
So I can give it unlimited amount up to the state party of the party with which I am affiliated.
Yes. From the exploratory committee.
So would you agree with me that that could potentially be a massive avenue through which people could get around our campaign finance caps? Because a lot of people could go out and form quote-unquote exploratory committees. They could solicit funds from a wide scope of people who are like, I'm already maxed out to the parties, but I'm going to give you the max to your exploratory committee, wink, wink, nod, nod, you're not actually going to run. And then at the end, you just say, I chose not to run, I'm disbanding my exploratory committee, all of these folks' monies go to the state party. So I could have some well-heeled Republican donors that say, I'm already maxed out to the Maryland Republican Party through what they can really spend directly, but I want to give more, man. I want to Citizens United this baby up, and I'm going to have you all form exploratory committees, and I'm going to give the max to those entities, and then it's all kind of not going to happen, and you just transfer hundreds of thousands of dollars into the state party. Would that be, that would be legal, I guess, is, I don't think any of us would encourage that, but it would be legal.
Right, it would, it's an extreme example, but it certainly is not out of the realm of possibility.
Do we have any requirement in today's law, today's campaign finance law? I don't understand really the necessity to form an exploratory committee. So if I want to run for the House of Delegates, I can just form a committee and call it me for delegate, and I can raise money up to the $6,000 cap, and then before the filing deadline comes, I can say, me for delegate decided not to launch, and I'm not going to do it. So why do you need an exploratory committee rather than just form a committee under our existing law?
Yeah, you have to have intent. That is the key issue here. So you cannot just simply create a shell entity and say, I'm going to raise money for the sake of raising money under this shell name. You actually have to show, you actually sign documentation that says that is your intent to explore this run for office.
So in order to form a campaign finance, and just correct me, I may be getting this wrong. In order to form a campaign finance entity, do you have to have previously gone to the State Board of Elections and declared your candidacy for things like state legislative office?
I'm sorry, repeat.
So the steps that we all take, we have to go here to the State Board of Elections, we have to fill out a bunch of paperwork and go through disclosures to legally file to run. Do you have to do that under current law before you can form the bank account, the campaign finance entity through which you can solicit and accept contributions? Because I know, for example, and I'm not picking on this individual who I think very highly of, the state treasurer who was once our colleague still maintains a campaign finance entity. He no longer is running for an elected position, but I believe since he left our halls, he has solicited and raised funds within that campaign finance entity that was started while he was in part and parcel of his role here in the House of Delegates. So it seems to me that what we're creating is something under the law that kind of already would exist. You can already say, I think I'm going to run for governor. You can file, you can start the campaign finance entity, even though you haven't filed the paperwork, you can raise money. How is that different than exploratory?
Yeah, so exploratory committees are designed to do just that, explore the opportunity of whether or not they want to run for office at all. So they're basically looking at, okay, they can raise money and spend money using this bill once we pass, especially once we pass this bill, the specific guardrails here, to how they can spend that money in order to investigate exactly what it is that they need to do to make a decision about whether or not they're viable or they have the time or whatever their internal issues might be. They might need to do polling, they might need to do outreach, they might need to connect with the community a little bit to see if there's an interest and viability for their office.
And we could do all of that today under our existing structure, though, right? I mean, I could file to run. Let's say I wasn't a sitting member of the House Delegates. I could not file. I could tell people, I could announce to the Baltimore Sun, I'm going to run for governor tomorrow, and I could start a campaign finance entity before I actually went and did the official legal paperwork, and I could raise as much money as I could into that entity. Buckle for Maryland.
So.
And then at the end of it, I could say, well, you know what? Filing deadline's coming up. I don't think it's going to happen for me. I'm not going to do it. Wouldn't that be the exact same thing?
Well, except that under this bill, we would be increasing the transparency that's occurring as that money is coming into that entity, as that money's coming into that exploratory committee. And so we're able to increase that transparency beyond what currently exists. So this adds new guardrails in place and adds a level of transparency that didn't exist before, which is what makes this bill so important to pass.
At the end of my campaign account, when our days end here, can we take all of our money left over and give it to the state party?
With your campaign?
Yeah.
Not your exploratory committee, but your actual campaign and campaign finance entity? Yes, you can.
So state parties can receive all the money that we raised for ourselves.
Correct.
And that's a loophole, obviously, for a way that they could raise additional money.
In addition to the same as the exploratory committee to that end.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Recognizing the delegate from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would
You're
the floor
welcome.
leader mind answering a question or two for me?
Happy to do it. Absolutely.
Okay.
Good to
So,
see you.
Good to see you. Do exploratory committees, like, can someone form one of those today, even though this bill is on the floor right now? Like, in Maryland, is it legal?
Yes, you can actually form an exploratory committee tomorrow.
And right now, are there limits on the contributions, or is it unlimited?
It's unlimited.
It's unlimited. And so if somebody forms an exploratory committee, they're receiving unlimited contributions, get, say, $10 million from a donor. Do they need to disclose any of that information currently?
They don't have to disclose anything.
And how about under this bill?
Under this bill, you absolutely will have to disclose that information to the state board.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Recognizing the gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Hey, great to see you.
That's quite a distance.
I know. Good to see you. Does this bill speak in any way, shape, or form to people that you can hire for that exploratory committee? In other words, would immediate family members be hired, would be able to be hired to work on that exploratory committee?
Yeah, so, Madam Speaker, I apologize. I didn't have
It's
to
okay,
recognize.
recognizing the floor leader. Thank you for the courtesy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Good to see you.
Good to see you all.
Absolutely. So on the bill, it actually outlines specifically areas where the money can be used for. So I point you to the reprint on page 4. Section 2I, we have only for the following: conducting surveys or polls regarding the viability of the potential candidate for public office, direct mailings and other communications to potential voters, employing staff, establishing a website, qualifying paid digital communication, renting and leasing office space, and purchasing electronic equipment, including computers and telephones, and security.
Okay, so I'll take that as a no. There's no guardrails in this legislation as far as who you can hire and what relation they may be to the candidate. Okay.
You have to be able to show what that individual is doing. Through the transparency in this bill, you have to be able to show exactly what the individual is doing.
So that could be as easy as boosting Facebook posts. Or making Facebook posts. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
It's the same as the existing process. Yeah.
Okay.
That already exists.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
now we have to actually file it so that people know what we're spending the money on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no other amendments or questions, the bill is order printed for third reading. We have, would the clerk be so kind and read the next bill, please?
Senate Bill 153, Election Law, Campaign Finance, Entities, Oversight, and Control of Campaign Funds. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You are popular today.
I was going to say, my husband's pretty sick of seeing me today. So much be considered the reading of the amendments. Sorry.
We won't go there. So order.
Thank you.
You're
the
welcome.
amendments: 1, clarify that a candidate appoints the chair and treasurer of a candidate's own campaign finance entity. 2, authorizes the candidate or officers of the entity to designate individuals to carry out duties on behalf of the entity instead of the agents making disbursements on behalf of the entity. And 3, repeal the requirement that a campaign manager be a registered voter of the state. Please move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Would the floor leader rise for a moment just for a question or two?
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you,
You're
Madam
welcome.
Speaker. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Very good. So I think I understand the bill, but I do have a question about some of the changes that we're making with the treasurer. I like the idea of kind of an assistant or a sub-treasurer. I'm not sure how we're describing it, but I like that idea. But I do want to understand sort of the practicality. So who else, if anyone, could potentially sign a check or make a payment for an account if this bill becomes law?
Yeah, no one else, just the treasurer.
So how does that work logistically? Let's say your treasurer is on vacation for a few weeks. We're in the middle of campaign season, and you need to get something paid. How does that work then at that point?
So there's no change to that. The current law says that only a treasurer can write a check. So if my treasurer takes vacations, your treasurer takes vacations, the treasurer is the only one that is supposed to sign a check. The interesting thing of what this bill is able to do is it helps the campaign finance entity to appoint other people who can make contracts with other folks. For example, reach out, you want to have a fundraiser, for example, and you need somebody to go out and solicit a bunch of invitations for bids for places for you to have that fundraiser at. This allows the campaign finance entity, instead of just the treasurer, to be able to handle those conversations. At the end of the day, the check for the facility itself would have to be signed by the treasurer, though.
And what does this do with respect to, say the treasurer needs to be removed for some reason? Who is able to do that under this bill?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Say your treasurer needs to be removed for whatever reason, some reason. Who can do that under this bill?
So, as is always the right, it doesn't change the process. The candidate still has the right to remove the treasurer.
I thought it was the chairperson now. That's not the case?
I'm just confirming. 1 second. No.
It does not change anything about how.
No, nothing in the process. Right here on page 3 of the reprint, subsection 3, the candidate shall appoint the chair and treasurer of an authorized candidate campaign committee, which is current practice, and it's in this bill as well.
Okay, and one final question. What if anything, does this do with the chairperson of a campaign entity?
Other than the candidate can appoint them, it doesn't have any. It does nothing else. Yeah, we just clarify that the candidate can appoint the chair, and that's it.
Okay, so that's the chair is sort of status quo from what the law is currently.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Hearing no other questions or amendments, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
Senate Bill 459, Procurement, Advertising, Maryland News Organizations, Local News for Maryland Communities Act of 2026. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
The amendment clarifies the definition of a qualifying organization under the bill. Move the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order passed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
Senate Bill 665, Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing and Maryland Advisory Council on Deaf and Hard of Hearing, renaming. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
The amendments are technical changes and otherwise conform the bill to match the House cross file, which passed unanimously.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the paperwork report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The paperwork report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is auto passed for third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
Senate Bill 803, alcoholic beverages, Class 3 wineries and Class 4 limited wineries, bulk wine and pumice brandy.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So much be the reading and considered of the minute.
So order.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 authorizes the Montgomery County Board of License Commissioners to issue a Class D license to a Class 3 winery in Silver Spring. Move the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the paperwork report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The paperwork report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is auto passed for third reading. Concurrence calendar number 26. The clerk will read the first bill in the Senate amendments, and it's going to be the Committee on Government, Labor, and Elections. The clerk will read the first bill in Senate amendments.
House Bill 260, Public Financing Act, Fair Campaign Financing Fund Distributions, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Chair of Government, Labor, and Elections.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and
You're
thank
welcome.
you for your patience.
Oh, you're welcome.
The Senate amendments conform the bill to the cross-file as passed the House. The amendments change the deadline for filing the annual camp report from third Wednesday in January to the fourth Wednesday in January. Move to concur with the Senate amendments.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 260 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 94 votes in the affirmative and 31 votes in the negative, House Bill number 260, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 270, Military Family Inclusion Act, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Chair of the Committee on Government, Labor, and Elections.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
We move to concur with the Senate amendments. The amendments make technical and clarifying changes.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 270 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 127 votes in the affirmative and 0 votes in the negative, House Bill number 270, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 552, Commission on the House of Reformation and Instruction for Colored Children Establishment, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Move to concur with the Senate amendments. They conform the bill to the Senate cross-file SB 776.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 552 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 126 votes in the affirmative and 1 vote in the negative, House Bill number 552, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 864, Public Works Contracts, Apprenticeship Requirements, Maryland Workforce Apprenticeship Utilization Act, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We move to concur with the Senate amendments. They make technical changes to the title, and they restore options for contractors and subcontractors to contribute to the apprenticeship programs and makes clarifications to define terms in the bill.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 864 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 126 votes in the affirmative and 4 votes in the negative, House Bill number 864, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1001, Election Law, Authority at Polling Places, Revisions, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Move to concur with the Senate amendments. The Senate amendments conform the bill to the cross-file as it passed the House. The amendments authorize the Deputy State Administrator of Elections to keep order in a polling place and make technical changes.
House Bill number 1001 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 130 votes in the affirmative and 0 votes in the negative, House Bill number 1001, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will be so kind and read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1016, Labor and Employment, Non-Compete and Conflict of Interest Clauses, Employer Workforce Relocation, and Out-of-State Employers, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you again.
You're welcome.
We move to concur with the Senate amendments. The amendments applies the provisions of this bill to licensed architects.
House Bill number 1016 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 101 votes in the affirmative and 29 votes in the negative, House Bill number 1016, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will be so kind and read the next bill.
House Bill 1017, Correctional Services, Private Immigration Detention Facilities, Zoning Requirement, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
We move to concur with the Senate amendments. The Senate amendments expand the bill to include all types of detention facilities operated by private entities.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 1017 is on third reading and final passage. Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And the floor
You're
leader,
welcome.
if you could just very quickly, I think the committee chair said that it would now apply to all correctional facilities. Is that correct?
No, what it does is it prohibits third parties from actually using structures, any kind of buildings and real property as detention centers or facilities.
So would the federal government be considered a third party?
The federal government would not be considered a third party in this.
Okay. All right. And then last but not least, I'm getting my DLS person next to me here. Is yeah, he's got his phone on.
I see his trusty phone ready to.
Yeah, my trusted colleague. So and I'll keep it brief. If the federal government contracted with a private entity, but a federal government contractor, would that be considered a third party?
As long as it's not interfering with the government use, then no.
That's an interesting response you gave there. So in other words, the third party, if it's a third party, but on behalf of the federal government, that would be included within the bill. Is that correct?
It depends on how that's done. If you're talking about a third party contracting.
Yeah. All right. So I'll give you a better question.
Yeah, please do.
Is there a scenario in any instance that the third party could be a third party working on behalf of the federal government?
Yes, if it's actually operating the facility for the government.
Thank you. Thank you for answering those questions. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be voting no on this bill. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the delegate from Hartford.
So I just want to make sure. Hi. Good evening. We miss you on our committee. I hope you're having fun on the other committee. You bailed on us there. We've forgiven you. We've forgiven you. So I'm just looking at it. It looks like there's been a lot of changes to it. There's a ton of italicized, underlined stuff. So I'm on page 2 of that final reprint. It says, notwithstanding any other provision of law, a unit of local government may not approve the construction or operation of a building, a structure, or other real property to be used by a private entity as detention, and the private entity may not operate or occupy the building, structure, or other real property as a detention facility. So just to make sure I understand this correctly, the federal government could contract somebody to build a location, but they cannot then contract another third party, because it wouldn't be the construction people, it would be another third party to operate and run that. They would have to staff federal employees in there. Is that my understanding of the intent?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, I understand. So they
directly with the government.
Okay, so actual federal employees, not third parties that are contracted by the government to operate it, but that does not affect the ability to construct it.
They would still need a permit to construct it.
They would need a permit to construct it, but they could hire a third party, because we don't actually employ typically construction workers as federal employees. We almost exclusively contract that out to third party construction businesses that go through the necessary prerequisites to be approved contractors for the federal government. So that process to construction is still permitted under this bill?
So we would get into some zoning areas, right?
Right.
And so we're also expressly eliminating zoning here for,
localities.
Yes, it has to be expressly stated that the actual, again in zoning, that you can actually build, operate a detention facility.
And is that express zoning permission state level? Because I don't think we have that currently.
That's correct. It would
so
be
we're
state
going to
level.
create a new.
But no, we do
Oh,
in certain
we do.
instances.
Okay.
So, for example, our agricultural areas. There's certain zoning areas where you can only do specific things that are designated by the state. Again, agriculturally. We also have institutional zoning. So there are some things that the state actually does.
Okay. So I'll give a
authority to do. That's right.
Okay.
So yeah, so again, remember, we're talking about the localities, right?
Right.
And the state expressly saying whether they can do that or not.
Okay. Can you give me an example of where it is currently permissible? Like, is there a specific town or an area right now where it's permissible by state law or under this bill to build a correctional facility?
We don't have private detention any place in the state of Maryland.
Not private detention. I mean, just from the zoning perspective alone, without private detention. I'm just trying to figure out if the federal government wanted to come in, where could they look to consider purchasing land to build this location? How would they find that? What would the process look like?
Well, they'd have to go to individual counties, et cetera. I mean, we don't have that, we don't have that information. So.
Okay, I thought this was state level zoning.
So what it is, and my apologies.
No, it's fine. It's complex, it's fine.
But no, it is really to get down to the county levels, right?
Okay.
Where there is expressly permitted zoning.
Okay, so it is a county zoning law about where corrections can be built.
Correct.
So one, they would have to make sure that the land was inside the allowable areas in the county or local jurisdiction.
That is correct.
Two, they can hire a third-party building contractor, but not an operations third-party contractor once the project's complete and implemented. Is that correct?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Applying to private detention centers, okay?
Yes, no private at all. This is
That's
just
correct.
okay. So I just want to make sure I understood, and I'll try to relay it.
Okay.
So thank you very much. My understanding is that what I was trying to ascertain is it still possible at all for the federal government to come here and build a facility? And my understanding after the conversation with the floor leader is that they have to first make sure the local zoning is respected and allowable. They may only hire a third party in the construction phase. They may not have a third party or a private detention center or company of any kind operate, own, staff the location. So it is potentially possible, but this would be, obviously would make it considerably harder, as actual federal employees would have to staff the entire facility versus third party, which I think is what is traditionally what's done. So just for the body to understand what's actually happening here, it's a big change, so I just want to make sure folks knew. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be read.
You're welcome. Recognizing the delegate from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to
You're welcome.
clarify quickly for the delegate from Harford County, we can't tell the federal government to do anything. So if they apply to build or construct or operate any facility in any county in Maryland, this bill doesn't apply because we can't regulate that. This bill only applies to private entities, LLCs, private companies, private corporations who want to own, operate, build, construct, run a private jail, and that's what it applies to only.
Okay, that actually helps me. So I don't think it changes the process by which the federal government would have to come in, and like the process they would need to go through. It just, I understand what you're saying now. So there has been third-party companies attempting to sort of preemptively create opportunities, I believe, and we're shutting that down. But now we're also saying, even if the federal government comes in, are you saying that they potentially could still hire third parties to staff the company, to staff the facility? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that if a private entity wants to create a private jail in the state of Maryland and this bill passes, they can no longer do so. If the federal government wants to create a facility, build it, run it, operate it, then fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, we are prohibited from blocking that.
Okay, even if they hire a third party to staff it, is what you're saying? No.
That depends on at what point in the process they hire the third party to staff it. If this is a zoning bill, so if there is a private entity that applies for authorization, then that's blocked. If the federal government owns and plans to operate the facility, our hands are tied.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is only mitigating who is permitted to apply for the zoning for the facility. So if the federal government applies, then they could have anybody build it and anybody staff it because they're no longer in the application process. It's already been approved?
No, because that would then become a private facility. So if they let's say the year is 2026, the federal government applies for some sort of zoning permission to build a jail that is not a private jail because it's a federal facility that's being completely run by the federal government, and then later down the road they somehow start operating the facility in a private way, they make the decision down the road, that actually is not, that no longer would comply with the bill,
So
which outlaws private detention in the state of Maryland.
They wouldn't have to sell the property to the private entity?
They would not have to?
I'm asking. I'm trying to understand where that line is between third-party contractors and the federal government. So the federal government purchased the property, they built it using a third-party construction companies. It was completed, and instead, once they open it, instead of staffing it with federal employees, they decided to contract out to a third party that does corrections staffing, for example. At that point, is it considered, under this bill, is it considered now a private third party?
Yes.
Oh, that's how this bill is written? So they would have to have federal employees only staffing the place. How would that be enforced on them?
This bill says that we're not going to allow any private jails of any variety. And so,
well, how? So it's already built. It was built federally. You know, it was all got the zoning approved.
The state of Maryland has police powers to tell private entities what they can and cannot do in the state of Maryland. So, for example, until relatively recently, the state of Maryland did not allow private companies to run marijuana dispensaries. And then we made a public policy decision that did allow private companies to run marijuana dispensaries.
Correct.
We are now making a new policy determination that private companies cannot run jails.
Okay, so
we don't currently have that right now, and maybe we never will.
Right. My confusion is how when the federal government owns the property, how will the state of Maryland then be able to stop them from hiring third-party contractors for, let's say, food services? Let's say that all of the other corrections employees are, for example, federal employees. They're on the federal payroll. What if they hire a third-party contractor for food services exclusively? How will you guys stop them from doing that?
We can't. They're the federal government.
That's what I figured. Okay. I was just wondering, are we going to like bust in there and be like, I think that food service worker is not on the federal payroll. Something tells me that they're a subcontractor. The answer is no, we won't be doing that. Okay. All right. Thank you guys. I'm still very red.
Recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you. If the gentleman from Montgomery County would rise and try. You just said something very interesting. I don't want to paraphrase. You just said that we can't control the federal government from placing an immigration facility or a detention facility in our state. Is that correct?
Listen, please. Okay.
So
thank you.
Generally, states do not have the power to tell a federal facility that it can or cannot erect a building in the jurisdiction.
Oh. Thank you, Lord. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
House Bill 1017 is on third reading and final passage. Has everyone recorded their vote? I'll give people a minute to come from the back. All right. Does anyone care to change their vote? We have a couple people, all right. If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 95 votes in the affirmative and 36 votes in the negative, House Bill 1017, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1178, Municipalities, Annexation, Limitations, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
We move to concur with the Senate amendments. The Senate amendments make technical changes and requires notice for the General Assembly members of the legislative district to which the land is being annexed.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 1178 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 130 votes in the affirmative and 0 votes in the negative, House Bill number 1178, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1300, Maryland Commission for Women Alterations, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Move to concur with the Senate amendments.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Madam Speaker, apologies. I wanted to permission to use delegate's name.
Permission granted.
The Senate amendments rename the African American Heritage Preservation Program in honor of Speaker Emeritus Adrian Jones.
Wonderful. That's really beautiful, very deserving. The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 1300 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 126 votes in the affirmative and 3 votes in the negative, House Bill number 1300, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. She deserves it. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
House Bill 1448, Municipal Elections, Reporting of Information to the State Board, Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
Move to
welcome.
concur with the Senate amendments.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 1448 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 127 votes in the affirmative and 0 votes in the negative, House Bill number 1248, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Vote change, the lady from Baltimore County. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Speaker.
welcome.
House Bill 864 to no.
Vote change, the gentleman from Baltimore County. I'm going to come this way.
Thank you. House Bill 1178. I want to be in the green.
Remember your yellow slips. Going to the gentleman from Southern Maryland, right here in the front.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Bill 8642 red.
The other gentleman from Southern Maryland in the back.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Bill 864 to red. Thank you.
Anyone else on this side? Vote change. The gentleman going back here to Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Bill 9632 yay.
Anyone else? All right. We're doing a special order calendar, House Bill 653. The clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 653, income tax subtraction modification for public safety retirement income amount favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Recognizing the maker of the motion, the chair of the Committee of Ways and Means.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're
My
welcome.
questions have been answered.
Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order printed for third reading. The next special order calendar is Senate Bill 607. The clerk will read the bill, please.
Senate Bill 607, income tax subtraction modification for public safety retirement income amount favorable report adopted.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Recognizing the maker of the motion, the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My questions have been answered.
Are there any other amendments to the bill as to its title? The bill is order printed for third reading.
Vote change.
Yes, recognizing the lady from Baltimore County.
Thank you. House
You're
Bill
welcome.
1300 to no, please.
You're welcome. Recognizing the gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Change.
You're welcome.
HB 864 to red.
Anyone else? Any vote change? All right. We are going to do the report of the Committee on Health. It is report number 41. The clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 39, behavioral health rate methodology modernization, work group establishment and study favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order passed to third reading. The clerk will read the next one, please.
Senate Bill 370, state acupuncture board revisions favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order passed to third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
Senate Bill 778, clinical research pharmacies and clinical trials permits and ownership favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order passed to third reading. The clerk will read the next bill, please.
Senate Bill 808, Health Insurance Provider Panels Requirements, favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is order passed to third reading. The next report is the report of the Committee on Government, Labor, and Elections. It is report number 49. The clerk will read the bill, please.
Senate Bill 777, Labor and Employment, Workforce Development, and Local Workforce Development Boards, Local Workforce Solutions Investment Act. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Move the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered passed to third reading. The next report is the report of the Committee on Judiciary. It is report number 51. The clerk will be so kind and read the first bill, please.
Senate Bill 775, Public Safety Gun Buyback Programs, Destruction of Firearms, favorable.
The question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered passed to third reading. The next report is the report of the Committee on Judiciary. It is report number 50. The clerk will read the bill, please.
Senate Bill 791, Correctional Services and Public Safety, Immigration Enforcement, Prohibitions, Community Trust Act. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader. Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yes, recognizing the
So
majority leader.
So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So order.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 replaces the term covered individual with convicted individual under the provisions of the bill. Amendment number 3 prohibits state, local, correctional facilities from coercing, intimidating, or threatening an individual based on certain immigration status of the individual or any other person. Adds a severability clause and makes this an emergency bill. Move the amendments.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I
You're
have
welcome.
some questions, if my friend would indulge me. The bill is being amended now to be an emergency bill. Is that correct? Normally, we just talk to each other without the microphones, but for everybody else, we probably have to do that. Yes.
Yes.
And so it would take effect immediately upon potential execution by the governor?
Yes.
Okay. What if an individual is currently incarcerated in a state facility for murder, and the emergency bill is enacted, and a week before the emergency bill was enacted, the correctional facilities, in that case it would be the state entity, Department of Public Safety and Corrections, what if they had contacted, let's just say, ICE a week ago, week before the emergency bill came into effect, and said, hey, we have a guy here, he was convicted, I'm just going to say so no one gets offended by their county, he was convicted in Allegheny County. He murdered someone, he was convicted in Allegheny County, he has the good fortune he gets to stay in Allegheny County, we'll put him at the North Branch Correctional Institution, and we reached out to ICE back in March, early April, and said, hey, we have this individual, If you want to come pick him up and deport him, he's here. And then after the bill gets enacted, ICE comes. Is there any prohibition on that?
Well, you're confusing me here a little bit. I guess let me back up and explain a little bit more about what the amendment does. So the bill came in quite, as it was introduced, it was quite a sweeping bill, but the Senate put quite a bit of restriction on what's going on here. So let me just...
So if you're convicted, it's okay now?
So the bill actually mandates that for anyone convicted who's in a state prison, so anyone doing any, it's 18-month sentence, felonies, these serious crimes, people in a state prison, every single one of them is going to have ICE notified before they're released. So that is actually making a statewide standard that for anyone who's convicted of one of these serious crimes, ICE is going to get notified 2 days before they're
2
released.
days. That's the question I was going to ask. I didn't want to interrupt you. So they're going to get notified only 2 days before. What if ICE, because, I don't know, 2 days, we're talking 2 business days, just 2 days, 48 hours. So what if you notified ICE on Friday, Joe Blow is going to get out of the North Branch Correctional Institution. He's been here for 15 years, serving a sentence for second-degree murder. We've discovered while he's here, obviously, that he's not in the country lawfully. Maybe he's a member of MS-13. And he's gotten parole. He's gotten diminution credits. He's gotten whatever it is. He's going to get out on Monday. We're going to release him. We're going to take him out to Winchester Road, Route 220, and we're going to open the big gates. If you've ever seen the North Branch Correctional Institution, it's quite intimidating. If you watch movies, barbed wire, as far as the eye can see, the mountains of West Virginia and the Potomac River sit behind it. We're going to walk him out the door, Shawshank Redemption style. Goodbye. We notified you on Friday that we're doing that, and ICE is, we notified you 9 o'clock in the morning, and ICE is like, well, I can't get somebody there to pick him up at 9 o'clock in the morning, Monday morning. Is he going to be released?
So the practice, especially at the state facility, is that they are held until especially ICE is going to come say, yeah, well, okay, we're going to come by on, this time, 2 hours, whatever. They're going to be held.
On laundry pickup
That
service.
is the practice. But part of the reason it's not quite spelled out that way is because there's a constitutional question about whether you can detain someone beyond their actual sentence. And so we've had guidance and advice over the years that this bill has actually been here for at least a decade. So over the years, there has been advice that if you were to suggest you were going to hold them longer than their sentence, that you would run into a constitutional problem. So it has not been written that way, but that is the practice.
So that's what the State Department of Public Safety Corrections has indicated is their practice, is if they know ICE is coming, they'll hold that individual up, but the bill is silent as to whether or not they're required to do that or whether they're told not to do that.
Again, this is currently what's going on. It's current practice, and so we shouldn't be. If that's your concern, the state facilities don't have the concern that you're suggesting.
What about, and I appreciate clarifying that the bill will now, if you're convicted, if you're incarcerated in a state facility, some of the bill's provisions wouldn't apply. Let me expand on that hypothetical slightly differently. Let's say that you were arrested in January, and you were charged with second-degree murder. You were charged with first-degree rape. As you well know, when you don't bond out, you're not released on bail perhaps, the judge reviewed your case and said, I'm not releasing you back into the community. You're going to have to stay in some form of detention until your trial or until this issue has been resolved. You don't go and do your time while you're waiting pretrial detention, typically in state facilities. You typically do it in local facilities. Baltimore City has a little bit different because their local facility is kind of a state facility, but in the vast majority of our jurisdictions, you're in your local jail facility. So let's take my hypothetical and say I was charged in January, February, March with a significant crime, with rape, with second-degree murder, with attempted murder, and my local law enforcement authority who maintains my jail, my detention center, contacted ICE at that point in time and said, hey, we have Joe Blow. He's here. If we have evidence to believe, or reason to believe, not here lawfully in the country, if you would like to pick him up for the purposes of putting him in your system for immigration deportation, We have him. We have custody and control of him. So they made that communication before the bill goes into effect. The bill is going to go into effect in an emergency status. ICE comes out the next day after the bill goes into effect and says, we're here to get Joe Blow. Can your local detention center authority continue to cooperate with ICE and say, yeah, we contacted you a month ago, 2 months ago, 2 weeks ago. Maryland legislature just changed the entire law and said we're prohibited from doing that, and we can't give them to you now. Would that be a violation of the law?
Well, I don't want to get into questions about retroactivity and things like that, but let's just say this is a straightforward case, and you're talking about someone being held pretrial for a pending murder case. I mean, if I'm being frank, this bill does require a conviction. And if you'll refer back to our prior discussions on this type of issue, part of the concern is what we don't want happening is someone to be accused of a very serious crime, murder, rape, something of that nature, and then have the locals call ICE and have them deported before they actually stand trial, are punished and put into prison. That's what we don't want to happen. Now, if what you're concerned about is that they're going to be running around on the streets while they're awaiting trial, number one, I certainly don't believe that's happening for a non-citizen, charged with murder. But there's specifically a clause that was put into the bill in the Senate to talk about looking at whether you actually do release these people pre-trial, and to have the judge look at their status in that circumstance as part of what's going on.
I understand. There's something in the bill that says whether you choose to simply release someone or hold someone, you can take into account whether they have an administrative detainer or something short of a judicial warrant for deportation purposes.
And again, that's to ensure that they're not going to leave before trial, but they're actually made to stand trial and face a jury here in Maryland, and if they're guilty, to do time in the prison, and then when they are done, we will call ICE and let them know.
So we have philosophical differences about whether it's important to cooperate with the ICE or other federal entities about, hey, I have someone who's been accused, and they've been accused, not just been accused, they've been accused to a sufficient degree that the law enforcement in our county has found probable cause to charge them. Perhaps a grand jury has indicted them, and a judicial officer has reviewed it significantly enough to say that they have been remanded to our custody, and they are currently in our custody. It's not just people that get arrested, it's people that have gone through multiple levels of due process in the probable cause analysis and in the judicial analysis to require them to be detained. So part of my real concern is by making an emergency bill, you may, and if you recall, a week or so ago, seems like a year ago, we had the budget debate, and one of the clauses that was put into the budget this year is, and that's before this bill was ever moved anywhere. This bill, I guess it had a committee hearing, but had not received a vote or discussion of any public nature in either the Senate or the House when we did the budget a week ago. We put a provision in that budget that says if you violate Maryland law, or you have to certify, as your locality, you have to certify that we are in compliance with all of Maryland's limitations upon your interactions with ICE if you want to get your local law enforcement aid money. And my concern is that someone in Allegheny County may have someone in pretrial lockup, potentially for a very serious crime. The law of a month ago, 2 months ago, did not prohibit them from contacting ICE. They contacted ICE. ICE now shows up after this bill goes into effect because it would be done that quick. I mean, we moved the bill out of the Rules Committee at 11 o'clock this morning. We're going to try to pass it before 11 o'clock tonight. I guess the governor's going to sign it tomorrow. The entire law of the state of Maryland is going to change in 24 hours. And so those law enforcement entities and those counties that rely on that money, are they going to get in trouble if they called ICE last week and ICE comes this Tuesday to pick them up? Is the budget going to say, guess what? You're now subject to losing your local law enforcement aid because you didn't follow the law of Maryland, which didn't exist when you made your original contact with ICE.
Madam Speaker, can I yield to the Chair of Appropriations?
Yes, you may. Chair of Appropriations.
Anticipated this question earlier today, Madam Speaker. I checked with DLS. Unfortunately, the BRFA provision does not apply to this.
Okay. Unfortunately for you, fortunately for me, just for clarification for our...
I'll say this. Look, we expect, the reason we put the BRFA provision is we expect of anyone in this state, law enforcement to follow the law. And regardless of whether it's in the BRFA provision or not, we're going to expect that law enforcement follow the state of Maryland law. And you know there's always a budget next year.
Well, that's true, but the law when you passed the budget, or the law perhaps when they contacted ICE to begin with, it was completely legal, but now they're being told if ICE shows up, now you're in violation of the law, and the handcuff for that is we're going to take away your money. But I appreciate, which is clarification, which is really what we should be doing here, that clarifies it for local law enforcement officials in counties, that if they had pre-existing contact with ICE and they're simply following up to finish out that interaction, they're not going to be subject to losing their state aid, which is the right way to do it, in my opinion. You had one or two other things that I talked about in the amendments I'd like to ask you about, if you don't mind. You said that, did you say state or state and local law enforcement and detention personnel cannot, the words I wrote down quickly were coerce or intimidate individuals in their custody with relationship to their citizenship status. Is that, can you explain that a little bit better for me, what that entails?
The coercion language?
Yeah.
That's like if you're, you might, for example, start asking someone about their family, trying to get information about them while they're in front of you. And this basically, again, if you are not dealing with this bill covers felonies, sex offenses, crimes that had a lengthy sentence out of state, and anyone in a state correctional facility. Everything else, we are asking the facilities not to inquire about the citizenship status for the lesser offenses.
Not to inquire about lesser offenses even if convicted.
Not to ask, yes.
Even if convicted.
ICE can certainly do its job, but remember, the question at the center of this bill and the amendment is not whether these people are going to be deported, whether there's immigration consequences for what they're doing. It's what the state and local governments are going to do to put their resources into that question. ICE can certainly come get whoever they want. This is just a question about who the state is going to assist with. And to your point, the state is now saying it's going to participate in felonies, sex offenses, long sentences, again, for anyone in the state facilities.
So the state facility is going to, in your words, participate, communicate with ICE for a certain classification of convicted criminals. For another classification of convicted criminals, they are not.
But, and again, context for why this is happening, and it goes back to the budget question we were just discussing. I mean, hours after we passed the last bill on this topic about what state and local governments can do for immigration enforcement, hours after we passed it, we had sheriffs from across the state saying that they basically were not going to comply. They were going to do this, that, and the other to get around the spirit of the law, if not the word of the law. And so, yes, you have something like this. And so why does it get into questions about coercion and local facilities? Because part of what these sheriffs were saying is they said specifically that they didn't care about convictions. They were going to send daily arrest sheets over for anyone in Allegheny County. And that's driving without insurance, tons of incarcerable offenses, not convicted, where these people would just be automatically ushered on to ICE, and as they had notified us of, they'd have no say over whether these people would later end up in Guantanamo, Alligator, Alcatraz, and what have you. And as to your point about, oh, well, maybe they shouldn't have done these things, if you're not convicted, I mean, I'll give you a real basic scenario. You have a bunch of kids in a car, get pulled over, one person has contraband, they're often going to charge the whole car full of people until the matter is settled. What you're proposing is that before that's even happened, every single one of them would get processed and shipped off to Guantanamo, potentially, via ICE.
I'm not in charge, and neither is anyone else in the room, as we've gone over many, many times, how the federal immigration laws are enforced. That's not our job, and we don't determine that. But I guess, you know, in response to it, I'm just trying to inquire more into the bill for second reader. As you well know, there's a tremendous amount of debate on the merits and amendments to be offered on third reader later this evening. But I am trying to get to some of what the committee did, some of what the bill looks like, because I have to be honest with you, 48 hours ago, no one I knew of thought this bill was going anywhere. And I understand that perhaps the precipitation of this was in part because some local law enforcement officials, after the 287G bill was passed very quickly earlier this year, made some statements. I always counsel my clients talk less. That usually works better. Let the lawyers talk more, let the clients talk less, usually works better. But at the end of the day, what is the coercion or I think you used intimidation. Is that I'll give you an example. A local detective comes upon a scene where a young girl is beheaded. She's beheaded. And they conduct a quick investigation, and within half an hour, an hour and a half, they find that there's a potential suspect in the case. They think they have good evidence. They found a fingerprint that might match. They have a witness who says, I saw them come out of the building. And they go and they arrest this individual, and the individual is detained. They get an arrest warrant very quickly. The next day, the next morning, the individual says, I didn't do it. I was there. I was there. Because I'm a member of MS-13, which beheads its rivals and beheads those who perceived to have ratted on it. I had a cousin who was a Fairfax County police officer. One of the first years he was on the job, that's what he did. He walked into a townhouse and saw a 14-year-old girl beheaded with a machete by MS-13. And they've done it in Montgomery County. They've done it in Frederick County. And so the officer makes this arrest. The judicial system says, yep, you're arrested. You're there. We immediately hold you. That individual and his attorney appears the next morning. No bail. And he says, I didn't do it. I was there. I didn't do it. And the detective arresting, he's now in detention. He's now in the local lockup. He's not simply a suspect. And the officer says to him, hey, you better tell me who did everything. I can't. Not going to tell you. I got the tattoos. Not going to tell you. And he indicates, you know what? You don't tell me, your next trip is to CCOT. You ever say anything about CCOT? You're going to be on the plane this weekend. And the individual says, I don't want to go to CCOT. I'm going to tell you the truth. It was this one, it was that one, it was the next one. Would that person now be able to say, and all those other people so implicated, be able to say that that was a violation of this law because the local law enforcement, while this individual was detained, charged, not convicted, threatened or coerced someone about immigration status?
No. And to be clear, that part of the bill covers the corrections officers. So, and there's specific language in here that doesn't impede the law enforcement investigation itself. And unfortunately, I do believe that a law enforcement officer who is interrogating someone could make all sorts of threats and suggestions in order to induce someone to say what they want. But this goes to someone who's detained and confined behind walls, and there's very good reasons to not want the local corrections officers to be able to threaten people based on their immigration status when they're behind walls.
So and I appreciate the clarification. That's what we're trying to do. So the correctional officer herself or himself, they can't engage in that conversation, but the investigating officers, non-corrections, more standard law enforcement, they can in the same facility, in the same area, in the same rooms. There's no special wall of protection that attaches because you're in the local detention facility.
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. You said that the terminology has changed from covered to convicted. Is that right?
That's just a stylistic difference. I mean, we had covered officers in another one of these bills too, so I think this is a little bit different.
So the
Convicted.
bill no longer says it protects covered or it allows for communication with covered individuals. It says with convicted individuals.
Yes.
So no matter what someone is charged with, or no matter how many times they are charged with it, local and state correctional facilities, law enforcement agencies cannot cooperate or provide information to ICE or other similar entities until they are convicted.
That is correct.
Thank you. I appreciate clarifying that. I'm sure we'll have more chance to talk about it tonight. I appreciate it very much.
All right, you're welcome.
All right. Seeing no other additional...
Madam Speaker.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I had some questions
All right.
on this bill.
Absolutely. Recognizing the gentleman from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
Hey, could the floor leader rise?
Floor leader.
Go the other way now. Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So we've already restricted the 287G program this session. You passed that unilaterally. This bill further restricts local correction officers from contacting ICE, correct?
You could say that. I mean, I would argue that this just creates one standard for the state rather than restricting people one way or another. I think it creates a statewide policy for how we approach this topic.
So it would be a statewide policy of local corrections not being allowed to contact ICE, correct?
No. Actually, that's not what the bill says. It has mandatory notifications for a whole range of people, again, confined at the state level, and the locals are certainly still able to do so for, again, felonies. It's the same thing, felonies, sex offenses, serious crimes.
What about DWI?
That is going to depend on where you are confined. Again, if you're confined in what the nature of the offense was, but if you're talking about a misdemeanor DUI, depends on how much time you got and where you are.
Let me give you a scenario. Illegal alien here illegally did some horrific crime in his country, has an active detainer. He's in St. Mary's County Jail, picked up for a DWI. Can the officer go and contact ICE?
If they are picked up, merely picked up, we are
arrested for DWI.
We are asking for them
it's in corrections. I want to be specific.
No, we are asking for them to be convicted if what you're asking for is the corrections facility to be. This bill is about predominantly those changes are on the corrections facilities.
So can you give me an answer to that question, the scenario? So illegal alien in the country did a horrific crime in his country. ICE issues a detainer because they know they're here. They crossed the border illegally. ICE knows they're here. They weren't convicted in America. They were convicted in their other country. Picked up in St. Mary's County for a DWI. They're in the correction facility. Can the officers in the corrections facility even question them? Can they call ICE? Do they have any ability to find out who this person is and whether they should be in the country illegally at that point?
They can follow the ordinary booking procedures are excluded from restrictions in this bill. So they'll go through an ordinary booking procedure. When they get fingerprinted, ICE is going to have access to know who they are and whether they have priors. The priors themselves may put them into the category where they're suddenly a covered, convicted individual. But again, much of this depends on the facts. But if they are not convicted, and it is not one of the serious crimes listed here, it is the policy of the bill that we're proposing here that you wait until they are convicted, sent to their detention, and upon their release, you call ICE and have them come get their person.
So the scenario I just laid out is no, right? That's the answer. No.
We are asking the local officials to wait until there's a conviction, and we are asking them to look at the nature of the crime.
So let me ask you this question then. So if they're released out in the community, and that's what this bill's aiming to do, prevent local law enforcement from contacting ICE about an individual they have in custody, when they reoffend, who's responsible?
When they reoffend. Well, number one, we are asking that it be established that they've offended first. So
well, they're in custody already.
No, but they're not convicted. They're in custody. So I think it makes sense if you're going to say they're reoffended, let's actually establish that they offended. That's what the trial is for.
One final question. When the 287 bill, or the bill limiting and banning the 287G program was signed into law, the governor came out and said this legislation doesn't authorize the release of criminals. It doesn't prevent Maryland from working with the federal government. This bill does, correct?
No, I would not say that, actually. It actually mandates working with the federal government. The bill mandates that the state calls ICE anytime someone is being released.
But yet it says on local facilities are prohibited.
No, it does not. it excludes covered individuals, and those covered individuals are felons, sex offenders, and it's all on 805. It does not ban it. It does not ban that for those individuals at local facilities.
Madam Speaker, thank you for indulging my
Yes.
questions.
You're welcome. Thank
Madam
you.
Speaker.
Recognizing the delegate from Baltimore County, and I'll come back to you from Anne Arundel, okay? Yes.
Thank you so much,
You're welcome.
Madam Speaker. Would the floor leader rise
Floor
for
leader.
a couple questions, please?
Certainly.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have just a couple technical questions. On page 3 of the bill, lines 21 through 25 say that except as provided in paragraph blah, 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 a local correctional facility may not inquire about or investigate an individual's citizenship, immigration status, or place of birth. So that's saying the local jail cannot ask those questions. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, well, thanks. Then let's turn over to page 4, where if you look on lines 13 and 14 down to 18, it says nothing in this subsection shall prevent a local correctional facility from inquiring about a routine booking. In a routine booking, don't they ask for someone's place of birth?
This is an exception. As I noted earlier, we took routine booking procedures out of here. But again, it's not as to the citizenship. You don't need to know their citizenship status. Again,
Well, they don't ask that, but
exactly.
fingerprints,
That's the intent of that provision.
intent, and the actual, it sounds like it might be drafted wrong because, again, it goes down. We've had a lot of comments about bills being drafted, amendments being drafted wrong from your side of the
I can
aisle.
actually blame my senator on this one.
Let's just kill the whole bill, send it back to them. How about lines right below that? Entering information into the NICS system. Don't they have to ask about their place of birth when they do that?
The NICS part is already done, and frankly, this is also why we were getting at, for many of these individuals that do ping a result through a NICS hit, the ICE is able to come get these folks, whether we do anything or not. And this has been part of what we've been saying. They have access to much information, even if we pass these bills.
And that's wonderful. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the bill being drafted incorrectly because on page 3, you say very clearly, they may not, line 23. They may not ask about the place of birth, but then on the next page, they have to ask about the place of birth.
It basically says accept on the next page.
So, yeah, that sounds like you got a drafting error in the bill. But then I want to ask you one more question on page 5. The lines 4 to 7. A state correctional facility shall provide written notice to federal immigration of an individual who's subject to an active immigration detainer within 48 hours of release. So is that saying, tell me what that means in plain language.
We had a conversation about this in committee. This is basically saying that, again, 2 days before release, you're going to give ICE notice that someone's about to be released.
So what if they are released from the courtroom or administrative hearing? Do they have to go back to jail and be held for 48 hours before
that's not going to be covered by this bill. And again, the sort of sweeper that was put in here to deal with that was just, again, language pointing to the judge's ability to look at the full circumstances regarding the particular defendant as to whether they're a flight risk before they make those types of determinations. But we did not go very far into that, other than to say the judge's have the ability to look at this, and in fact, in parts of the bill, we're asking them to look at it.
Okay, it looks like there might be some bill drafting errors in the bill. Thank you. I have an amendment at the desk, Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Amendment 263522/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So order.
Thanks so much. This is a very simple amendment, and it simply changes the name of the bill because we should have truth and information. The title of this bill is the Community Trust Act, but what it really needs to be called is the Maryland Sanctuary State Act, so that everybody knows when they look at the bill exactly what it does. So with that, Madam Speaker, I move my amendment.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Madam Speaker, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one, but this is just a matter of perspective. I actually find that title to be highly inaccurate. As I've noted, the bill requires the state to call ICE for every single person released from state prison on these charges. So it is actually anti-sanctuary state. Thank you.
What if this is
Recognizing, let me recognize you.
I'm sorry.
Recognizing the delegate from Baltimore
Thank
County.
you. What
You're
if
welcome.
if I would press my amendment? If it's a terrorist wanted by Interpol, that doesn't apply. This bill has a lot of technical problems, but really the state, the community should know what this bill does, and it makes this a sanctuary state. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? All right, giving you a minute for people to come in. All right, everybody reached their seats. Everyone has voted. All right, has everyone recorded their vote? The clerk will take the call. There being 91 votes in the negative, the amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Recognizing the gentleman from Baltimore County. Okay? Just for planning purposes, I order pizza. It's gonna get here around 7. We're gonna try to give you a break and then come back. So just bear with me a little bit, okay? Thank you. The gentleman from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank
You're
you for
welcome.
what you just said also there, so I appreciate that as well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would the floor leader, would the majority leader, I guess, rise for a question or two?
Majority leader, floor leader.
Yes.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So I just was hoping maybe you could walk me through what this bill does with respect to administrative versus judicial warrants. I'm a little confused what it's doing there with that, and just kind of wanted to get your perspective of what those are and, you know, kind of what the bill's doing.
And while he looks for that, I want to let people know they have amendments, that we will be taking amendments on third readers. If the pizza gets here, you want to eat it warm, maybe you want to wait to third reader, but just a thought, okay? Go ahead.
Madam Speaker, I don't plan to be that long for the
Okay.
pizza. I mean, maybe, I don't know, we might.
Okay, floor leader.
So those provisions on the local facility, they're really only for the local facilities, right? And they basically say, this is the whole question about detainers versus warrants. And a detainer is basically just ICE requesting someone. And for, again, those the lesser charges that are not included in the scope of the bill, we are asking for a warrant, not a detainer.
Okay, so does a detainer involve an administrative warrant at all?
I guess it's a matter of terminology.
Okay. So they would have to so ICE would have to show a judicial warrant, is what you're saying?
Yeah, if they want to take the person, right? I mean, if they basically they're talking about removing someone from a secure facility, and they are not one of the specified people, we're asking for a warrant.
What does that process look like for ICE to get a judicial warrant for a person? What does that look like?
They'd go before a judge. They'd have to have some reason for it.
are judicial warrants typically for people, or are they typically for property?
So, again, if you're asking what the circumstance is that this would happen, it would be very rare, very unlikely. We are asking the process to be followed. I mean, that is where this is going, right? We would like the people to be booked through the process and go through the ordinary criminal justice process. If you're suggesting that somehow they should be released in advance of this, that is what we're trying to stop, because that's basically what would happen.
So it's my understanding that a judicial warrant is usually for property, not for the person. So what happens if someone shows up with there's a Fourth Amendment warrant, essentially, right? So what happens if someone shows up with both? They show up with a judicial warrant and an administrative warrant, and the individual at the facility turns over their property to them, their whatever they came in with, their watch, their phone, whatever the case might be, but not the person. What happens there?
It's obviously not referring to their property. You need an arrest warrant. You need something for the person. It's not about the property. But again, as to whether this is going to happen often, no, it's not. And I think that's kind of the point. We are trying not to have these people leave the facilities without a warrant or without a conviction.
So doesn't the administrative warrant or doesn't the judicial warrant, I'm sorry, I'm getting myself confused. I didn't go to law school like some of us here, but doesn't that usually only exist with a criminal situation?
Yes, generally.
So what happens then if they go in with an administrative warrant and they say, hey, we've got this administrative warrant for Joe. We're asking you to turn him over to us. And the person there.
When you say administrative warrant, you mean someone in their department printed out a piece of paper?
No, I think it's a very well-known process, and I mean we've even talked about it a bunch on this floor that there are administrative and judicial warrants. In fact, we heard at one point on the floor that people would be able to make that determination on like the tarmac, that someone would know the difference between an administrative versus a judicial warrant on the floor.
But not as to a human.
I'm sorry?
Not as to a human. I guess I'm trying to understand where you're going with this.
So where I'm going with this, let me play out the scenario. Someone shows up with an administrative warrant. An ICE agent shows up with an administrative warrant. They present it to the responsible party there at the facility. That individual says, no, we're not going to turn over whoever to you.
Correct.
What happens then?
They're going to continue moving through their process in the local facility.
What happens then if the federal government, the ICE agent or ICE agents, whoever's there, says you are obstructing justice at this point because we're presenting you with an administrative warrant to that individual, to that state employee? What happens then? And they say, we're going to arrest you for obstructing justice.
This is a question we confront every day in all of these policies that we're doing. It's been the same question in the sensitive locations policy. It's the same question in the 287 bills. What happens when you hit this wall with state and federal conflict? I don't know the answer to how that's going to resolve. But again, we are trying to draw a very clear line here so that we don't have this sort of unpredictability to the process. It will be a known process with a very clear, bright line that is in this law. Bring a conviction, bring a warrant.
So potentially then we could have state employees put in a circumstance.
I hope not. I think this is going to be a very clear law. ICE will be able to read it. Maryland facilities will be able to read it. And it should be actually a lot more easy to comply with than the sort of wild, wild west that we have right now.
But to my point, so potentially we could have state employees put into a circumstance where they could be arrested, charged federally with obstruction of justice. What then is the state going to do for those employees to help them in that circumstance if they're sitting in a federal detention facility somewhere? What happens then at that point?
Like I said, all of this falls in the category of we are in very strange and unknown times. I pray to God we are not in a situation where we are at a conflict with the feds and the state trying to enforce one another's laws on each other about this. This is why I think it's been fairly carefully crafted so that we drew a reasonable line that would avoid this conversation. If you admit to what's going on before this, we had a wild, wild west situation where you have some people on one end of the extreme Other counties on the far end of the other extreme, we're bringing everyone, again, to one predictable standard. If you're the ICE administrators, I actually think this is a lot more easy to follow than what's going on through the dozens of counties, many of whom are talking about changing their policies basically on a daily basis with whatever's going on down here. So I think this is the more stable and responsible policy, not the one you're suggesting.
I'm not suggesting anything. I'm posing a hypothetical situation here. So someone could be.
Well, I mean, we can just keep going on with this hypothetical over and over again. No conviction,
I think this is a
no
reasonable
judicial warrant, and you're not. The bill is asking you not to have our people participate. It's that simple.
So someone that's refusing a lawful order from the federal government could be found up to many years in prison. I think it's 10 or 20 years. I'm not sure the exact.
We have passed already laws that require a warrant when someone comes by with merely a detainer and we have some other reason to ask them for more. A reasonable expectation of privacy. They're trying to enter a private part of a facility. In this instance, we're talking about a controlled facility. These are wards of state under our control. We don't just hand humans over.
So again, I'll go back to the question I asked. What will the state do in that circumstance for that individual that is sitting potentially inside of a federal jail cell somewhere?
Madam Speaker.
I'm going to yield to the chair.
Yield to the chair.
Thank
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just want to go to a couple of points that you made. And one thing I want to make clear, you were saying that if the local agency did not comply with something that ICE asked them to do because they were following this law. Was that one of your questions?
Yes, that was one of my questions.
Okay, so they're not going to be immediately locked up. They're not going to be immediately anything of that nature. Keep in mind, what we still have is a process. We still have due process. So I understood what you were asking, but I just wanted to make that clear that it's not just a matter of one person's word. There is a due process. You don't just get locked up and just because someone says that's what should happen, unless you're a judge.
That's fair, Madam Chair. But Madam Chair, couldn't that person be arrested on site for refusing to comply with a lawful federal order?
If there is a federal order, then we're in a different situation, because you were saying that this is just the federal agent is asking you to do whatever the federal agent is asking. What we are not allowed to do, and this is in the Constitution, we are not required to do ICE's job. So if ICE is there to pick someone up, then ICE can pick that person up. But what we cannot say is that the state must become federal agents, and we can't do that.
But Madam Chair, I'm confused. How would ICE be able to pick them up if they're being refused entry into the facility, or if they're being refused to obtain that individual? How then would they be able to do that?
Now we're somewhere. The judicial warrant will allow them to do that. And that's what we're asking for in this bill.
Could a gentleman yield?
Okay. Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Question for the committee chair.
Committee
Chair.
chair.
Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. The committee chair.
Committee chair. I was following that path of questioning here and dealing with what the floor leader, the majority leader, was talking about earlier. And I'm looking at the legislation, and you just told my colleague, well, ICE would come pick up that person in that scenario. I'm looking at the legislation on page 3, line 1. It says immigration detainer means written or electronic request by the Federal Immigration Authority. That's a detainer. And then further down here, on line 22, a local correction facility may not inquire about, investigate an individual's citizenship, immigration status, or place of birth, or detain or prolong the detention of the individual. The legislation says that local corrections cannot contact ICE.
No, that's not what it says.
It says a local correction facility may not inquire to the people. I just read it.
You just read it, but you didn't. Perhaps you read it, but I don't hear the same thing you are hearing when you read it. So I'll read it.
Go ahead.
It says that a local correctional facility may not inquire, and that's inquiring of the individual. Okay, that has nothing to do with ICE yet. It also says detain or prolong the detention of the individual. Still, not ICE yet. So you've got to tell me the part where you see that we're saying that local agents can't do something with ICE.
So they have an illegal alien in custody, let's say arrested for a DWI. There is an active detainer. They're not allowed to even inquire to that individual or even prolong that individual on the detainer till ICE will pick them up. You're putting that requirement on the local officials. That is the purpose of the bill.
Well, keep in mind that there is an exception at section 4, where it says that if the citizenship or immigration status of an individual is relevant to a protection accorded to the individual under state or local law, then the local facility may notify and may provide the individual with the opportunity to voluntarily disclose. Otherwise, yes, you're right. They cannot ask these questions.
So
that's the local. That's the local.
Let's use a scenario that we have all seen in the news. Abrego Garcia. He's arrested. He's suspected of human trafficking. With this legislation, St. Mary's County, Charles County, anywhere in the state, Baltimore County, Anne Arundel, they are not allowed to pick up the phone or even inquire of that individual and allow ICE that they have him in custody. That is so.
Is that
because
a
he
question?
wasn't previously convicted.
Is that a question? Or
Isn't that so?
Isn't that so?
Madam Speaker.
Based on this bill that is not in effect yet, I cannot state what the past, this is on this bill, and this is going to be everything going forward. And on this bill, we are working with individuals who are convicted of a felony or of a sex crime or of an offense, for which the individual was sentenced to at least 5 years of incarceration or at least 5 years, and actually completed 5 years of that sentence.
So if you have an unconvicted gangbanger, you're not allowed to pick up the phone and call ICE, correct?
Well, how do you know that the person is a gangbanger if they haven't been tried and proven as such? I mean, I'm
waiting
curious.
for them to disclose it.
I'm sorry?
I guess we're going to have to wait for them to disclose it because per the legislation, you
have to
can't
wait
have an
until
administrative warrant, even though they're in the country illegally.
You have to wait until they're convicted. That's the way it works in America.
Yeah, well, they're in the country illegally. We'll reserve questions for third reader. This is going to take forever tonight, Madam Speaker, because getting straight answers is kind of like nailing Jell-O to the wall.
I would not, if I made, look, it is 6:54. We've been at it for 1 hour. We'll be here for a while. We're going to take a little break to eat. It's going to be a long time because we have second and third reading, but we're going to do it respectfully. It will be so unpleasant if we start going there. I know it's hard. Just make your arguments. It doesn't have to be personal, and it doesn't have to be nasty. Okay? Plain and simple. No, I mean it. For everyone, plain and simple. It just doesn't have to be. We are in control of our emotions and how we react. And trust me, I am not the same person I was a year ago or 20 years ago. But I have learned, because life has beaten it into me, that it's best to try to control my emotions. Okay? And I'm asking you to do that. The gentleman from Anne Arundel
Thank you, Madam
How are
Speaker.
you?
I'm doing great.
Good. We are. You're
ready.
between us and the pizza.
I'm
so
ready. I'm ready for Rocco's.
Let's do it. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, great to see you.
Now, remember you said the other day, I'm sorry, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Remember you said the other day you miss me.
I do miss you. So, and I'm proud of you. So,
thank you
for being chair. We've known each other like 10 years.
Yep.
So, my question is, and this is very sensitive to me, right? So, we have another Timothy McVeigh, which is an absolute possibility in this country. Let's flip the script because he was an American born. Let's make him born in Egypt like Muhammad Atta, right? The mastermind of the Hamburg cell. He's picked up on a suspected crime, but he's being held based on immigration status. What happens to that individual?
I am going to defer to, no, I have a person in mind. If you don't mind, Madam Speaker, I'm going to refer to the young lady from Baltimore County, please.
Absolutely. The young lady from Baltimore County. I repeated what she said, and I do know it.
It's
So the young lady from Baltimore City, will you be so kind and address the gentleman's question?
Thank you. And thank you for the question. And if I could just make a couple of related points. One is this does not impact investigations of crimes. So human trafficking, terrorism, all of those things, this has no impact on. So if the FBI is investigating someone, whatever their status, they can come interview them. They can, if they have reason to transport them, they can transport them. We're just saying that an ICE detainer, which by the way is a civil request, it's based on a civil violation, it's a request to law enforcement. Law enforcement does not have to obey ICE detainers. And ICE warrants aren't really warrants, they're directed to federal agencies, not to local. So I just wanted to make that clear. No one is disobeying the law by disregarding a detainer because it is only a request. But if someone is being investigated for terrorism, then great. I mean, we want federal law enforcement to have all access. If it's federal law enforcement investigating a crime, they would have access to judicial warrants, search warrants, arrest warrants, court orders to bring people into federal custody if appropriate, if they had probable cause. So nothing that we're talking about impacts criminal investigation by federal enforcement.
I guess my question is...
Would the gentleman be so kind and put the microphone a little
absolutely.
closer?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I guess my question is that person is being investigated, they're detained, but part of that detention is based on their immigration status and this, not warrant, detainer. Because we're awaiting federal investigators. This is the reason we're holding this person.
So it is true that if we pass this, this bill, then if they were not convicted of anything, including the crime that they were arrested for in Maryland, the local facility would not honor that detainer until a conviction. But ICE is immediately notified that this person's arrested. And if they're investigating for terrorism, presumably they're paying attention. So they can grab him the second he's released. So nothing is preventing ICE from doing that.
That's terrifying to me, and I'll tell you why. We get a Timothy McVeigh. Now, again, he was homegrown. We get a Timothy McVeigh who is pulled over based on, I believe, a faulty brake light, never been convicted. Let's say that person was held because of their immigration status, because they were never convicted, yet they've been they're under suspicion of this crime, they would be released. That's what I just heard.
It is correct if there was no probable cause that they had committed this act of terrorism, so that the federal investigators had no ability to take action, our system of criminal justice would not allow them to be arrested for the crime that there's no probable cause that they committed. But ICE would be notified of their arrest. They would know that they're in local detention, because that's an NCIC the second they're booked, and they could just arrest them the second they leave the prison. Or jail, excuse me, it's a local facility.
How long does it take for that notification process?
My understanding is that the fingerprinting, the booking procedure, the fingerprinting is close to instantaneous. I don't know, maybe it's a delay of minutes or...
Okay,
but
I'm
not an expert on how long, so I shouldn't speak with too much authority on that.
No, I totally understand. I appreciate your candor.
Yeah.
I got to be honest with you. As someone who was at the impact area, at the Pentagon. Part of the mission was remains recovery. So I've seen the direct and negative effect from this. That's very concerning to me. These answers are very concerning to me.
Well, I was just reminded that when Timothy McVeigh was arrested, there was a weapon on him, and he was so there was a crime that he was being investigated for.
True. But the reason for the stop was the brake light. The secondary offense was the weapon. Had there not been a weapon, even though there might have been some
But then how would
suspect-
we know? I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's no. It's good debate because maybe there was some suspected activity.
But
maybe there was a spontaneous utterance.
But this is why we have our complex system of criminal investigation, where you have to have evidence that a crime is that a crime was committed. So you're saying in a situation where ICE has no evidence, but just believes somehow magically that someone has committed a terrible act.
No.
Then if they have evidence, then there would be probable cause to take action.
No, that's not what I meant. Or I'm sorry if you heard that, or misread or misunderstood me. What I said was, or at least what I meant was, is that person is held based on their immigration status under this retainer, but based on this law, regardless of spontaneous utterances, regardless of, I don't know, we could make up a million scenarios, but again, we live in a very different world. We live in a post 9/11 world, so unfortunately, we have to think of these scenarios, right? That person, because they did not face conviction, would then be let go. Now, I understand what you're saying about the booking procedure is instantaneous, but in the meantime, that person would be let go. Although ICE would still be notified, they're still gone. They're still gone.
I just think ICE is monitoring the arrests of people who are suspected terrorists. I think they're monitoring them extremely closely. And I don't think it's just ICE. I think, in fact, it's other law enforcement agencies doing it. So I don't think that's a burden to expect that. But could I add one more point?
Yes,
so
absolutely.
we struck a balance in the bill because, as has been explained, we were trying to make
For
sure
the young
that-
lady from Baltimore City,
Yes,
thank you so much.
I'm sorry. I'll imitate.
Yeah, Marvin. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, Delegate.
So we're trying to strike a balance, which has been discussed. One is to make sure that if someone commits a crime in Maryland, they are prosecuted for that crime in Maryland. That's for victims. That's for justice for the state, the people in the state of Maryland. That's one thing we care about and the reason for this bill. But in balancing that, we have, if you look at the end of the bill, added that the judge considering detention, we can't direct that the courts have to, but we've indicated that the courts should consider their immigration status when they're deciding if someone should be released or not released. So that is the balance struck. But again, you're talking about a situation where you're saying ICE maybe has an idea that someone committed a crime. We have no way to assess that. So we're saying we want to process them on the crime that we do have evidence of, that we do have probable cause. We want to process that. And then if they're convicted, we're happy if after they've served their sentence for ICE to and really all it does is just notifying them and giving them a chance to be there when they're released and hand them over.
No, what I'm saying is another agency like the FBI uses an ICE detainer to hold them until they are able to intercept these people. And I understand your comments, but also too, and I really, really do hope that they're all being monitored. But we know that there are unfortunately thousands of people that are radicalized, sometimes, quite frankly, at a moment's notice. And those people are not on our radar. And that's what I'm getting at. So they are being held based on that detainer because another successor agency that ICE would fall under DHS, right? They would use that as a mechanism to hold them, is I guess what I'm getting at. And from what I'm hearing in this bill is because there was no prior conviction, we could not hold them based on those circumstances. They would be let go.
Well, all the information, so our local law enforcement works very closely with the feds on all kinds of criminal investigations. And anything that you're describing, I would hope we would have communication between local and federal law enforcement. Everything could be considered by our judge, our Maryland judge, in deciding whether or not the person should be released. So if we're able to present, if the prosecutor's able to present information that they're being investigated for terrorism, I can almost guarantee that the judge is going to take that very seriously and probably deny bail and hold them based on that information, all of which is admissible at the initial hearing and then the bail review as well. And in fact, we're going further and saying we want you to consider the immigration status if it's a serious crime. So all of that information can be presented, so it can be held by the judge on whatever the crime is in Maryland based on this information. There's no restriction in sharing that. And the judge will have to decide how valid, how credible it is. And then additionally, they can consider the immigration status.
Thank you, Delegate. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, colleagues.
You're welcome.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the delegate from Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
I have a few questions. Again, this is not quite my area of expertise. So, could the gentlelady from Baltimore City, I don't know who to ask, but when you were talking about the judge, I have a question about that conversation.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so can you explain to me again how the judge would know the immigration status if you're not doing it when they're arrested? If you're not, like, where does that format go? Is it only if their lawyer or the prosecutor tells them? Is that how that works?
Presumably, yeah.
Okay, so when the judge considering status, there's nothing in any documents other than what the lawyer presents to them, what the prosecutor presents to them that they're making the decision on.
So that would be, yes, presumably provided by the prosecutor, who is certainly at every bail review. And I don't know, across the state, I don't know if prosecutors are at every initial hearing, but they are at many. But the
okay.
information can certainly be provided.
Because that's a point of
paper
confusion
form
for me,
to
is
the
how the
commissioner.
judge would know when you're talking about a pretrial decision. So if that is always the case or not, if they are considering immigration status.
Yeah, so it would have to be affirmatively shared and presumably by the prosecutor. So they would have to believe that it's relevant to the flight risk. So it's not, we're not suggesting that immigration status is necessarily relevant, but if they're considering a serious crime, if, for instance, they have information that the person is being investigated for human trafficking, the prosecutor could also present information about the immigration status in that context. That's the balance that we've attempted to strike with this, or the Senate has attempted to strike with this piece of legislation.
Okay, so it's not something that's just automatically done and automatically there for the judge to consider.
No.
Okay. I'm also not familiar with, and maybe you are, but it wasn't a term that you are, I'm not familiar with stylistic law. I'm not quite familiar with that, the term the majority leader used. He was talking about the covered versus convicted and the amendment to change it from covered to convicted and said it was a stylistic change.
Technical, just technical.
It's technical. So
Yep.
covered means convicted in this case? They are the same or they are not the same?
It really doesn't matter because we've defined it. So yeah, so it's the definition that's critical. We thought convicted was the more accurate descriptor. I mean, the majority leader can answer it, but just that we thought it was a more accurate term. But because it's defined, it doesn't really matter. It's the definition that controls.
Okay. Well, okay. So it would be, it's not just that they are a covered individual in a local jailhouse situation. When we're talking about a pre-trial, it wouldn't just be that they were arrested for it, because we're also talking about, we want them to be convicted here, but that's a process that takes a long time, and we're talking about detainers and releases. So the difference again is just stylistic.
No, just the going from covered to convicted. Those two words, that change is a technical change.
Would the young lady?
Oh, of course.
All right, recognizing the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome.
So the point is that the reason why we say stylistic is because the definition that was there was covered individual means an individual who has been convicted. So instead of saying covered individual, we tightened it up just to say a convicted individual, and we define what they had been convicted of. So the language that was already there was covered individual means an individual who has been convicted of, and then you go into what they've been convicted of.
Okay.
So that's what we mean by stylistic, that's all.
Okay. So then going where you were talking about, Madam Chair, if I could, or yes, because the next question was for something that you said. So you said this is only about going forward, but if this is an emergency bill, as one of my colleagues was saying, it could significantly disrupt processes or individuals who are either already in jail or already being held or in some kind of process of it, what kind of disruptions would this possibly do as an emergency bill when you say it's only going to be for going forward?
So I can't predict the disruption, but what I can say is that this is the way, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, we create law all the time. And when we create the law and if it gets signed by the governor, then that becomes the law, and that's what you have to follow. And so I can't speak because I don't know all the nuances of how the correctional facilities work and all of that. But like I said, when the law becomes a law, then you have to follow it.
Okay, and then kind of going along with that, when someone is arrested and they're put in the system, I heard that ICE would be notified, and we talked about the process of how that would happen. So, but and that ICE could come and pick them up. But how will ICE know when they are going to leave the jail if they're not being held?
You lost me on just one little part, if I may, Madam
Yes.
Speaker. So you said, how would they know if they're going to leave the jail if they haven't been held? I wasn't sure on that.
Right.
Can you ask that again?
When we were having the conversation about if someone was brought in and if they're fingerprinted and then they're put in the system, and then ICE could come pick them up because ICE is checking the system, obviously, evidently, on a minute-by-minute basis. How does ICE know when or how to come pick them up then if they see that? Like, what would the process for that be? How would they know when either they are leaving the jail? How does that part happen?
I think I understand now.
I hope so. Yes,
on the bill on page 5, I believe it is, at section 2, and where we actually say that the state correctional facility must provide written notice to ICE upon the release, within 48 hours of a release of the individual.
So they're held for that 48 hours, but only under the now convicted charges?
Okay, so let's go back.
Okay.
So let's go back. I just want to make sure we're talking apples to apples.
Yes.
So the holding is one issue.
Right.
The release is a whole different issue.
Right.
So you were saying, how would ICE know? ICE is going to know when a person is being released. The holding, if they're going to be held, if that is a convicted individual for the crimes that are listed, if they have been convicted for the crimes that are listed. So that's the holding part. And while they're being held within that state and local facility, if we have provisions when ICE will be notified. So we have two separate things going on, the actual holding or the detention, and then the actual release.
Okay. And then I guess the part about where we were talking about if they aren't convicted, that the local facility doesn't comply with any of that, even if there were detainers on them, there's no holds, but there would be notification because of just being simply put in the system when they were arrested. Do I have it right?
So at the booking of an individual,
yep.
That information is available to ICE.
Right.
And so they would have that available, and then they will know if they have a, if they have a detainer out for a particular person, or if they want to get a detainer for a particular person.
Okay. But then, like I said, how then will they? Oh, okay, never
They'll
mind.
know because they have the system to look it up.
Okay, I think I'm going to yield to my minority whip, if that's okay.
Recognizing the minority whip.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'll be quick because I know people are trying to feed themselves, so we can continue this discussion. So, Madam Chair, I have a question for you. Isn't it federal law that a CGIS fingerprinting card is filled out within 72 hours of an arrest?
You know, I have to say, I did not hear that question,
Sure.
but I'm going to yield it because I'm sure it's a question that that the gentleman from Baltimore County would like to ask, if Madam Speaker would.
Yes,
mind.
I'm going to recognize,
Madam
because you're
Speaker.
yielding to the gentleman from Baltimore County.
You're about to say young man? Thank you,
Young
Madam
man
Speaker.
from Baltimore County.
Young enough.
Yes,
So
sir.
here's my question, and I'll get to it. So is it a federal law requirement that individuals arrested have to be fingerprinted within 72 hours through the CGIS system?
I don't know if it's exactly 72 hours, but they must be fingerprinted, and their information must be added to the CJIS.
Isn't it also true that on that fingerprinting card, it asks you country of birth?
It asks you country of birth.
So how do we rectify that there's a federal law that requires all individuals in the state of Maryland who get arrested to fill out a fingerprint card and states explicitly which country of birth you were born in, whereas we are now about to pass a law that explicitly says that the booking agency is not allowed to ask that question?
Well, that's not true, because what it does say is you can ask the questions that are pertinent to booking as they do today. What is not on that card is citizenship.
Okay, so let me read the language of the bill. We can make it short or we can make it quick. It says explicitly, a correctional facility may not inquire about or investigate an individual's citizenship, comma, immigration status, comma, or place of birth. Now, I would argue that this law that you're attempting to pass is in direct conflict with federal law in our state. So I'm hoping we get a question before so we can get some pizza.
Hold it, hold it.
And the reason is that the federal government...
If you look at page 4, line 15, inquiring about information that is material to a routine booking procedure or, and it goes on. So any information that is, so even with that, while we say it in one place, if it's pertinent to a routine booking procedure, which you've suggested it is, and I agree, then yes, that can be asked.
Okay.
But once again,
so
not the question about citizenship.
Well, but the entire discussion we're having is about individuals that have been arrested for some other crime. By the way, there's another crime that's been committed, which they happen to be in the country illegally, but we won't address that at this moment. But the problem is we're having a discussion about the purpose of this bill is you don't want anything to happen unless somebody is convicted of a certain crime. My point in all this is that anyone who gets arrested that gets fingerprinted as required by federal law has to answer whether their country of origin where they were born, and there is specific language in here that appears to contradict that. And you can say if it's routine booking, but how do you decipher between someone's answering this question for routine booking versus someone's answering the question for immigration purposes? It seems to me that it's very gray. Because everyone who goes into the facility is going to get fingerprinted and is going to have to answer that question, and yet you're putting in a bill that says that they're not allowed to answer that question. And you don't, you know, if it's booked for booking, it's okay, but if it's for immigration purposes, not okay. It seems to me that is going to be very problematic.
So, you know, we may, well, anyway, I would just say this.
And we got a lot of amendments. I can add another one.
Okay, well, and I'm sure you will.
Okay.
But for once again, if the information is being collected for routine booking purposes, issues of origin of birth are permitted. That is the standard procedure today.
So here's the problem, and I'm going to end with this. If I shoot someone in Frederick and I get pulled into the detention facilities, are you suggesting that when the fingerprint card is filled out that they're going to determine if it's for immigration purposes or for just regular booking? I mean, that
no,
seems...
they're going to follow normal procedures and they're going to do what they do for booking.
In other words, every single person in the state who gets arrested is going to fill out that card and fill out the part about which country of origin then how are you meshing that, suggesting that, well, is it for the purpose of booking or is it for the purpose of immigration? The two, you see where I'm going with this?
I do, but I do see the distinction in my mind.
How is there a distinction?
Because once again, I'm not asking about immigration. I'm not asking about citizenship.
You're asking about the origin of birth.
But that doesn't determine my citizenship.
But it's explicitly.
Am I right?
It's explicitly prohibited in the bill, and you're not distinguishing between the two. You're not distinguishing between the two because you're suggesting that law enforcement agencies are. This is what's driving me nuts. I got to be honest with you. Is that our whole argument is that people that get picked up for committing an additional crime, like shooting someone, raping someone, et cetera, that's what we're concerned with that. But you're making it sound like the person booking them is either going to book them for immigration purposes or book them for the crime in which they were arrested for. And you can't tell the difference is because they're getting booked because they committed a crime, an additional crime. Every single one is getting booked because they committed an additional crime. And you're saying, well, that's okay.
When you say they committed an additional crime, I'm not sure I'm clear on.
Yeah, like they were arrested for a DUI or arrested for assault or rape or murder.
And what's the additional crime?
Well, the original crime is that they're in the country illegally. The secondary crime is that the one that they've
Well, not everyone that's a non-citizen is not in the country illegally.
I understand.
Right? So you've made an assumption that everyone that's, right? So let's correct that. So at the end of the day, an individual gets picked up for a crime. And if they've committed another infraction, criminal infraction here in the state of Maryland, and that infraction fit into any of those categories, right, then they would be subject to the potential of communication with ICE. If they did not, if they were just picked up and I'm just picking them up on a DUI, they're going to end up going through our process. And they're going to get the due process that anyone who is here in the state of Maryland receives. And there's no difference in that process, in a due process, between a person who is a citizen or a non-citizen. And what we're suggesting is let us handle the due process like we would do anyone else who is here in the state of Maryland, with some exceptions.
All right, so can I ask a question? This is my final one, and I'm done, I promise. So on the existing CJIS fingerprinting card that all agencies are required to use in the state, there are two questions. One says place of birth, and the second one next to it says country of citizenship. So are law enforcement agencies allowed to require a suspect, somebody who's been arrested, to fill that portion out? Under this bill?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
I just wanted to ask if the floor leader would yield for one question.
Absolutely, Madam Chair.
I'd like to ask just one quick question.
Sure.
Do people who are arrested always give all the information that they are asked?
I don't know.
Probably not.
I don't get arrested very often.
So keep in mind, well, I don't either, but I would imagine that every individual who's asked a question do not always give accurate information. Sometimes they give the correct name, sometimes they don't. So it's really irrelevant.
I got to push back because you're answering a question with the question. So mine was, and respectfully, mine was very specific because every law enforcement agency in our state is required to fill this form out. And on that form, there's two questions. And so what I want to know is, should this pass in the next 5 hours, are facilities around our state permitted to fill that form out completely, including those two questions? That's my question.
And my answer to that question is that law enforcement can fill out to the best of their knowledge, and they're getting that knowledge from the arrested individual. They're getting that information from the arrested individual.
So that's a yes.
So therefore, that individual may or may not cooperate and may not give that information at all. And if they don't, they can't complete it.
All right, so the place of birth, yes. this bill passes, they're allowed to fill that out on the CJIS form, and then country of citizenship, yes, they're allowed to fill that out?
No, that's exactly the opposite of what the bill says.
So what you're saying is that the required form that every single person who's arrested in the state is required to fill out currently by the federal government, they're not allowed to fill out. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, unless
Okay.
it is material to...
Thank you, Madam Speaker. All my
and I'm
questions
still
have been answered.
speaking, and I'd like to finish my
Go
sentence.
ahead and finish.
I was saying
Please.
that unless it is material to routine booking. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions or amendments?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the delegate from Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Whoever wants to answer this question. If someone is arrested, but they have not yet been convicted, is it possible that they could be out on bail, no matter the degree of the crime? They could be out on bail because they have not yet been convicted and back in our communities to convict further crimes? Yes or no?
Yes, however, I'll point out again that we attempted to, well, the Senate included a provision that attempted to get at this where they said a judge who is going to determine whether someone's being released or not is going to, we're asking them to look at the immigration status so that they can incorporate that into whether they think this person's a flight risk. And of course, part of that determination is also whether they're a public safety risk.
So if an individual is arrested for rape and they are not yet convicted,
It's
and they're
highly
not
unlikely that an undocumented resident is going to be arrested for rape and released.
that's not what my research tells me at all.
If those are the facts that are presented.
But if they're not answering the questions on the card that I never heard of before just now, and you're not
doesn't
checking,
sound like a candidate for being released on their own.
But if they're arrested in a local and put into a local jail and the jail is full and they have not been convicted, they are routinely let out until they go through the process of being called to court and to
I
be
don't think they're being
actually
routinely
convicted.
let out for the serious offenses we were
Well,
attempting
law
to get at
enforcement
here.
that I've spoken to have told me 100% differently than that they could be, until they are convicted, they could be released.
And routinely are two very different things. Lots of things could happen. Many things don't.
But there is a chance that rapists and child molesters and people doing terrible crimes could be released pending their conviction, correct? Yes, you said yes, correct?
That's what could happen with the policies I think some of the minorities suggesting we do, that these people get deported before they are actually made to be convicted and do their time. I think it goes both ways.
I think that
It seems to me that some of the counties are trying to deport people, again, before they're convicted and made to do time in a prison. Rapists.
Well, I think that what we're talking about are people that are not being truthful about the crimes that they've already committed because they're not giving the correct information, and then they are, whether they're arrested again, if you can't have that information and that person is arrested and then let go on bail, they could be in our communities and putting our communities at risk until they are convicted based on how I'm reading this bill.
I don't see it that way. And I'll also point out that, as to your point about their priors, if they have a prior that's one of these eligible offenses, that does in fact come up and make them, if they're picked up later for a smaller offense, they are still eligible for inclusion in the bill, the prior offense.
Well, my research in reading what this bill does in comparison to what is happening routinely just conflicts with that. And you did say that, yes, they could be
It's
let
in the
out.
world of infinite multiverses, what you're talking about could happen, but it is not the ordinary course of business.
Well, I think that we need to err on the side of caution, but thank you for answering the question with a yes.
Recognizing the gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Can I, as the floor leader, ask a question, answer a couple questions?
Sure. Floor leader.
Sure.
If immigration status is relevant for a judge, why is it not relevant for a law enforcement officer?
We're not talking about law enforcement officers in this bill. We're talking about correctional officers predominantly, people in the jails and prisons.
Same question.
Well, again, if you're trying to release, if you're trying not to have them serve their time, I think it's that for us, we would rather have them stay in the facility if the reason you're asking that question is to pull them from the facility. I mean, that's at the heart of this.
Well, what I'm concerned about is, okay, let me ask you this way. What if somebody that is very dangerous that we end up releasing because we didn't pull immigration status, and they go out and kill somebody? Who is accountable for that then? Is it the federal government accountable? Whose mistake is that? Because we know we live in a very litigious society, and the family member that was killed is going to want somebody to pay for this misstep.
Well,
You
again,
agree?
if someone's killed, the person who should pay for that is the murderer. And that is what this bill is attempting to do, to ensure that that person goes through the process, is not released before their trial, conviction, and prison sentence.
Well,
so I
what
think
if we
we're getting
missed-
at the same thing here.
Well, I think there's a very high possibility we can miss a lot of these dangerous people is what I'm getting at.
I mean, look, we do the best we can every day to draw lines in these bills. If you look at the plain language of the bill, all felonies, all long sentences, people in state prison, people with out of state, I mean, we tried to catch it all. I don't know what to tell you. And after that, there's going to be a line drawn, and we tried to get the small offenses out of here. But on the other end of that, it's because you have counties that are sending all sorts of people off through the system who have no business being sent to Guantanamo or what have you for a traffic infraction. That's the other end of the equation that we're trying to solve. I think this bill strikes a reasonable balance.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. So the bill is going to pass, pass to third reader, okay? Now, the pizza is going to come up, but we need to do 2 housekeeping things before that. We're going to end the work at the desk, correct? And we're going to have the pages come because they need to go home. It's their last day, okay?
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the gentleman from Baltimore County.
Sorry, Madam Speaker. Vote change.
What number?
HB 1300 to nay, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so Madam Protocol,
Yes,
please.
Madam Speaker. Come on down. Boy, we have lost some of them. Oh my God, no wonder they was racing up and down. Oh, thank you.
The Speaker Pro Tem is telling me that we have some pages over there on that wall. The people standing up. Go ahead.
Oh, wow.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
wow. Okay. Oh, pages, my sunshines, my wonderful sunshines. What do you think, delegates? What do you think? Haven't they been wonderful? Wonderful, wonderful. We want to thank you, Pages, so much from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of our wonderful speaker that we have here. That I want to thank you and hope that some of you, let's ask one little question. How many is coming back on Monday? Oh my goodness. We got a new sunshine, Madam Speaker. You missed it. You missed it. We had a nice sunshine that came over there.
They're coming back on Mondays.
Monday. Yes, they're coming back on Monday, and that's wonderful. Listen, I would like you to come back on Monday, and do you want to do your little speech on Monday, the one that's coming back, or do you want to?
They're going to do it now for 5 minutes.
They're going to do it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Will you please be so kind? Just come up here, please.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All of you, come up, please. Thank you. And we appreciate you. All right. You want to do your presentation?
Yes.
Can we listen for a second, please?
Shh.
Give the young lady some time. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Alyssa Collins. I am a page here, a house page, alongside my fellow pages. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. It's okay. Just go ahead and do the speech.
Oh, okay. All right. Please join us, all of the 2026 pages for the House from weeks 7 and 13, in thanking and congratulating our page coordinator, Dr. O, for everything that she has done.
They have something for you. You deserve it. You want to read it? Go ahead, you can read it. Actually, it's okay, go ahead and read it.
Okay. Be it hereby known to all that sincerest congratulations are offered to Dr. Tawana Offer in recognition of her hard work, excellence, dedication, and service to the Maryland General Assembly Page Program. We, the week 7 and 13 House pages, thank Dr. Ofer for her unwavering service on this day, April 11, 2026. Our chapter may be complete for the 2026 session, but the book will never be closed.
First of all, you all are sneaky. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to our week 13 pages. They were the hardest working. I am so glad that this group was together for this week because there was a lot of work for them to do and they stuck it out. So congratulations to you. And the only other thing I'll say is this is my 9th session, and I've got 30-some-odd years of service in higher ed administration, but this has been the most fun I've had on any job in my life. So thank you very much for bringing hope to me. Every week I notice how encouraging they are, how hopeful they are, how caring they are about people and the environment, and it just gives me hope. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. On behalf of the entire body, first I want to say thank you to the pages. You have been amazing in helping us, okay? And many blessings to you, whatever you decide to do. Dr. O, thank you for running the program so beautifully, for being such an amazing role model, and for always having such a beautiful smile. Thank you so much for everything you do. We're so grateful to you. Okay? To the body, the pizzas here, they're going to bring it. We're going to take a break until 8:10, okay?
Madam
8:10.
Speaker, Madam Speaker.
Who's
right here in the front, right here, down
Yes.
the row. Hi.
One second.
Can I make a quick delegation announcement?
Sure, recognizing the chair of the Prince George's County delegation.
Okay, if the members of the Prince George's County delegation can meet very briefly.
But wait a minute, we have to do quorum call, so please come back. Thank you.
Can meet very briefly in the Silver Room right before you go get your pizza. We have one quick vote, and then that'll be it, and then you can eat your pizza. The
All
Prince
right.
George's delegation room in the Silver Room.
We're going to do quorum call, and then we have to quorum back in, okay? When we come back. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Everyone, anyone in the back, please come. Okay. So the clerk would take the call. There being 126 members present, the House is still in session. Let's listen to the minority, majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stands adjourned until Saturday, April 11th at 8:10 p.m. Legislative date, March 29th.
8:10 p.m. Thank you so much, Majority Leader.